Okay. Okay. Uh, there we go. All right. Peace and shalom, family. Peace and shalom. What's going on? It's your brother Divine Prospect, Kingdom Harbinger Ministries. We're back with another Freestyle Friday live at you. It's at 11:34 p.m. Better late than never. Let's try to have a nice little 2-hour show. See what goes down on tonight. Shout out to Lataris Harrison in the building. Shout out to Renzo Roberson. Shalom. Dita Star loves y'all. Shalom. What's going on, y'all? Make sure you share this link everywhere. Also, hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the content. And if you're watching this on the replay and you're brand new, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, and make sure you go back and check out all the content we have in the archives, because we have over 530 videos on this channel, right? Shout out to Kaya Houston, Manika Williams, shalom. My brother Emmanuel E, shalom. Yosef Wayman, shalom. The souls of our ancestors, shalom. What's going on? Shalom, shalom. Sorry I started late. I was actually pulled into a Clubhouse session that I was on for about an hour and some change until I realized it was getting late. Then I had to come in and get ready for our live stream. I actually had an alarm set too, but I was trying to wrap up. My brothers did not want to let me go from that Clubhouse session. But if you're not on Clubhouse, I'd advise you to go and download the app from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, set up an account, log in, and look up at DivineProspect. And make sure you follow me on there, because I speak and teach and build and learn pretty frequently on that platform, okay? So if you don't have it, you missed the whole hour and some change of that whole dialogue that went down. And it's an option for you to check, so that way you can see every time that I'm live or when I'm speaking, etc. on there as well. Okay. All right. So let me see. Shout out to the real Aaron Collins. Shalom. My first time here on your channel. Welcome, my brother. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you grab something warm to drink, maybe some hot chocolate or something similar to that. Get you something to eat, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. All right. Feel free to interact in the chat as you see fit. And if the panel was opened up, you're welcome to join. Okay. Shalom to Troop Seeker in the building. Andre Waverez, shalom. Let me see what you're saying here. Shalom on Clubhouse this evening. When you asked your final question before you got off, the brother's answer was, I believe so. It wasn't no. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, because I'm waiting to enter back into that conversation. And this is, I think that some people do not master the art of, I wouldn't say debate, even though that could suffice, but they don't master the art of, they don't know the rules of engagement, right? When it comes to assessing and evaluating oppositional position, right? Before you fire everything off. So typically what I like to do is, when I get into dialogues and conversations and somebody has a staunch stance, I like to ask some questions, right? So I can perform an analysis on what it is that they're trying to share, the position that they stand on, what they hold, whatever the case may be. So I have to be very meek. I have to be very humble and respectful, especially if it's not my platform, and engage in an appropriate fashion so I can retrieve information. It's called the surveillance and intel gathering stage. When you don't perform that, then what happens is you come out firing everything and you've left yourself vulnerable, right? You have to be strategic when you engage people, especially when you engage in points of view that are unique from yours, that you may have never heard from before or engaged or encountered. Those brothers on Clubhouse, I'm thoroughly familiar with their position is. I follow 44 on Q. I've been into their rooms and I know exactly their position. What is it they teach? However, as you can see, I don't know if he was in the beginning, DB, but in the beginning, they were not familiar with my position, right? Automatically that throws them off guard, because what tends to happen when somebody is not familiar with position, they've already strawmanned you and did what's called hasty generalization by including you with a group of other people, right? When they see that they can't catch you or target what you're saying or find a rebuttal or refutation, they start to make generalizations. Well, all y'all that believe this and all y'all subscribe to them, but well, hold on, I don't know about all of that. I'm speaking to you. Let's get very granular and let's speak to one another. This is how we having this dialogue. I'm not throwing you against a mirage of group of other people, another collective. Let's just discuss with me and you. And so as conversation ensues, I begin to ask more and more particular questions. And that's why I always, before I exit out, I ask the most important of all my questions. So that way I can get them to give me a definitive answer. And in that case, DV, he didn't give me a definitive answer. He can't say that, because then that would tell me that he's looked at every nook and cranny of everything in the Tanakh in order for him to come to that position. And I know already that that's problematic, because when we look at other works, right, like the Qumran community and how they gave their commentary on those passages that we're referring to in Daniel, Ezekiel, etc. When we go into the Talmud and we see what the Talmud says on those same passages as well, when we go into Midrash, or the Midrashim, and we look into the Midrashim, even Midrash gives you different interpretation. Now, when we go to the Targum also gives you something very different. The point I'm trying to make is that when a person makes a claim like that, and they don't have the weight of the consensus on their side, then that begs a lot of questions, right? And I didn't get a chance to really get into it because this is the surveillance and intel gathering stage. A great example for those of you who say, Divine, show me that in the Bible, because anything I say, we always have the super Bruce saying, show me that in the Bible. So let me show you that into the Bible. Let me show you the scripture for that, right? And I'm gonna get to the rest of the shout outs in a second. And you're probably like, Divine, what are you talking about? Give me a second. I'll tell you what that conversation was in a nutshell, and we'll get into that. But first, I have to give you a scripture, right? So let me give you scripture so you can see what it is that I'm doing. For somebody who says, Divine, not using the scripture. Let's get into the scripture, okay? All right. Let's go to Numbers chapter 13, and I'm gonna go to verse 1. Okay, let me zoom in so y'all can see. All right. It says, Yod-Heh-Wafe spoke to Moshe, saying, send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I'm giving to the people of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers, you shall send a man, every one a chief among them. Okay. Now let's scroll down. All right. Let's go to verse 17. Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, go up into the Negev and go up into the hill country and see what the land is, and whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, whether they are few or many, and whether the land that they dwell in is good or bad, and whether the cities that they dwell in are camps or strongholds, and whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are trees in it or not. Be of good courage and bring some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the season of the first ripe grapes. Now, if you know anything about what time of the year this is, it's actually the time of the year of, go back and get the calendar and you'll see, because on our calendar, we have various icons and we have a legend describing the icons. And some of the things that we point out in our calendar is the agricultural cycle. So we tell you when the first ripe grapes occur on our calendar. It's fascinating. Matter of fact, let me give you a sample of that. Let me get back into this, segue this back into what me and DB was talking about, and then explain y'all generally what the conversation was about. All right, let me move in that fashion. Let me show off our calendar real quick, because I think that some of you may not have the calendar. And if you don't have the calendar, then maybe you missed that note, right? That notice, you didn't get it or whatever. But I want to show you something fascinating about it, because as you're reading scripture, remember, when we read scripture, we look for culture. Culture is all encompassing of the environment, the people, the weather, right? Other sister groups, right? Customs and mannerisms, right? Language cues, idioms, etc. So we look at all of this. So when I read the Bible, a lot of times people who don't read it from a cultural lens, they overlook these things, because everything that the text mentions is significant. It's not there for fluff. It's not there to be superficial. It's not there to be glossed over. It's telling you this precisely because there's a reason why they went to the land in that region, the hill countryside. The reason why they chose that area, right? And there's a reason why it's telling you this is when the first ripe grapes came about. If you see that detail and you went to the next verse and have no clue why the text is telling you that, then something's wrong, because the immediate recipient audience will know exactly why that's being referenced. And what our calendar does, and what we try to do here at KHM, is put you back into time during that time period by removing your dogmas and all of these doctrines, right? To filter that and to really prep you for how the world was back then, how they saw things back then, how they interpreted things back then, why they used certain analogies and symbols, etc. And once you get that understanding, we then say, okay, now that you understand this, now compare that with your theological ideology that you have today and see if it aligns. And if there's not a one-to-one mapping, then you got to make a decision which one you're going to choose, because the spirituality of those people is encased within their culture. They didn't have a religion. This was not for proselytization purposes. It's not what that was. It was just for those people, right? When the Most High gave them this theocratic command and charge to establish themselves in the land, right? This was for those people and the Ben Nakar, the stranger that dwelt among them, right? Who were part of Israel, right? But they were not ethnic Israel. They were part of Israel, but partakers of the things that Israel was partaking of, right? But it was only referring to that group in Deuteronomy chapter 29 that came into covenant with Yah, only referring to that group. That's important, right? But watch this. Let me show you in the calendar, right? Something very fascinating, because we've been doing this on our calendar for about 3 years now, right? 2020, 2021, 2022. And I want to show you this so you can get an idea of what part of the year this is. And again, I'm only going to show you part of the calendar because I said you got to get it, but I want to show it to you. I want to show it to you. Let's zoom in. I want to show it to you. Right? Let me show it to you. Here we go. Let me share my screen. Check this out. You see this? Month 4, June 2021, the grape harvest. You see this? This is the time of the period when the grapes are ripe for harvesting. It starts in June. And if you go down, you see here, you also have it through August, right? And you jump down further and you see that the late grape is here in, I meant July and then August. So August is the latest or the last batch, depending upon when it was planted prior, is in August. But if there's early grape ripening, it would happen sometime in June, right? And you'll see we have that all on our calendar. And this is based on a ton of extra biblical sources to corroborate references that we see in the text, such as what we just saw in Numbers chapter 13. So if you don't have our calendar, I don't know what you're missing, but what I'm going to do for y'all is I'm going to share a link that those of you who are interested in the calendar, you can click this link in the chat, and this will allow you to get access to the calendar to those who don't have the calendar, okay? But to those who do have it, y'all was already on top of that. Say, oh, I know when that was. You already know. Nothing's going to escape your sight, all right? So we drop this link in there for y'all. And let's get back to reading this so you can understand all these biblical principles that I utilize when I interface or engage with people, because I make it practical, right? I don't just read that as a story and that's it. No, how can I apply that when I'm dealing with people, when I'm dealing with my community, when I'm dealing with society, right? This is why the programs you create and the services you offer come from our cultural paradigm that is encased or encapsulated in the scriptures, okay? All right. So now we go here, right? It says, verse 21. So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin to Rehob near Lebo Hamath. They went up into the Negev and came to Hebron, Achiman, Sheshai, Talmai. The descendants of Anak were there. Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. And they came to the valley of Eshcol and cut down from there a branch and a single cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole between two of them. They also brought some pomegranates and figs. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster that the people of Israel cut down from there, right? See that? Now look at this, verse 25. At the end of 40 days, they returned from spying out the land, and they came to Moshe and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran and Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him, we came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. And then they go on to, saying, oh, we can't beat them. But you have Caleb and Yeshua say, no, we can do it, right? So this is a technique that I'm utilizing. Again, I don't think I was sharing the screen. Let me go back real quick. Let's go back over there. Right, so I was reading here, right, verse 21 to 24, and I read 25 to 27. Okay, so this technique, I made it practical in my engagements with people. You have to spy out what people are saying first and take a sample of what it is that they're saying and you test it, right? And then once you do that, you bring that word back to other people who may be audience members or otherwise and have a conversation about what ensued, right? And that is how you handle it. But when you do that, as you can see, when the spies went out, they was not going for war or for battle. It was going out to do a surveillance and get intel. And they took a sample of what's in the land. So when we address people, our approach should be similar, because you'll see you're more astute and you'll be perceived as wise if that is the approach you take. And I say perceive because these are things that we can see in Torah made practical in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs is Torah made practical, right? And it gets its essence from what we see here in the book of Bamidbar, Numbers, as well as Vayikra, Leviticus, as well as Shemot or Exodus, and Devarim or Deuteronomy. Okay, so segueing with this information back into what it was we was discussing. So what was being discussed is we had a conversation, something completely separate, where I think they were saying the Shabbat, show me the Shabbat being kept outside the land. Show me the Shabbat being kept in captivity. Show me the feast days being kept in captivity and outside the land. And I demonstrated that. I showed that to them, right? Then the segue from there, because these brothers were only Tanakh only. They didn't deal with the New Testament. Then it segued from there. After we was having a good build on that, I guess because I was addressing it, they really didn't have no argument. They segued into, okay, let's deal with the New Testament. So they brought me to Matthew chapter 26. I brought them to Matthew chapter 26, where they asked about the New Testament, right? And I showed them that when Yeshua was speaking to them in Matthew chapter 26, if you go and look at the textual variants there in Matthew chapter 26, where he says, this is the blood of the covenant. The word new there is a later interpolation that we see in late manuscripts. Okay. It's not there. And I explained to them what a covenant meal is and all of that. So they couldn't get around that. And they said, okay, cool, no problem. Then they brought me somewhere else. Then they brought me to Matthew chapter 24. I addressed that with them. Then they took me from Matthew 24 and they took me to Matthew 16. I addressed that with them. Then we got on from there on a topic of the Son of Man, right? And then from there, we segue into Daniel chapter 7, having a conversation about the Son of Man. And they was telling me that the Son of Man, where the text says a Son of Man, which is singular, a son. If I say there's a boy there, am I talking about a multiplicity of boys or a singular boy? I'm talking about singular boy. It says a son of man, and then it used the pronouns him. That's what it's using there. So what they're explaining to me is that, oh, well, when Daniel sought the interpretation of that, he was told that the Son of Man, where it says a Son of Man, that is referring to the saints of the Most High. Well, what's fascinating is it's not in the definite article, because a definite article, if that was there, it would agree with what they're saying, right? If it was there. Or number two, if that term was used again. We don't see the term used again until chapter 8, where it's speaking about Daniel and him being a singular person. However, the conversation was getting a little granular, and it was going into the fact that, hey, when the interpretation of the dream came, it talked about the beast. Are you saying that a son of man there is not referring to the saints of the Most High? Then they said, well, when it mentions the beast, it says these beasts are kings. Are you saying that these were literal beasts? And it just went in different directions, different areas. And then I asked them a exiting question, and that was, are you telling me that Daniel chapter 7 has no correlating scriptures in anywhere in the Tanakh that talks about the time period in which Daniel's referring to? Great example of that. Daniel chapter 12 talks about a resurrection. Fascinating. Is that elsewhere in the Tanakh? Also, this end time, because I asked them when is that going to happen, because it was fixated on 70 AD. This event that Daniel's talking about in Daniel chapter 7, at what point in time is that referring to? Did it already happen? They said no. I said, is it sometime in the future? They said yes. And I said, are you telling me that there's no other scripture in the entire Tanakh that correlates with what Daniel was saying in Daniel chapter 7? I thought he said no, but DB just corrected me and said no. He said, I believe so. Of course he has to say that, because he's unsure. He was not prepared for that question, and that's okay. And shout out to those brothers. All those brothers are good brothers. I build with everybody, right? I build with Christians that elevate the New Testament over the Old Testament. I deal with Tanakh only that elevate the Tanakh over the New Testament. And I deal with those conspiracy theorists in between and people who delve in the gray areas. Trust me, I've heard it all, right? Well, I can't say I've heard it all. I did on Clubhouse, all types of new stuff come up, right? So I will say, no, I'll say novel things come up, right? That stems from a previous foundation. But I was already exposed to what these brothers were teaching. I already knew the angle they was coming from. I knew where they would go, but they was not prepared for how I would address things and the questions I was asking, right? But nonetheless, they emphasized their position. I heard what it was, but I was not there to debate. I was not there to fire all my ammo. I was there doing the surveillance stage, intel gathering, assessment, collecting samples. And then after you do an evaluation of all of that, then you return and then you get busy. That's how it works. So hopefully this was a gem that I shared with somebody out there. If sometimes when you're encountering somebody for the first time, a lot of times things that they say may sound strange. It may sound different. It may sound weird or unusual, right? But my advice to you is always be in the surveillance stage. Spy it out first. After you spy out, you do an assessment. After you do an assessment, then you do an evaluation, right? Your assessment can then lead to an analysis that can then lead to evaluation. And after you evaluate it, then you strategically choose what angle you're going to take in either rebutting or refuting what was said. And that is simply what I was doing there in that room, right? So with that, let me go on with the further shout outs. And thank you for that, DB. Shout out to Royal Gym in the building. I see you. Shalom. Malcha Bat Yisrael. Shalom. Sir Blawad. Shalom. Yahosef Ben Yisrael. Shalom. Keisha Marshall. Shalom. Tyrell John. Oh, what's going on, my brother? Yeah, you can ask your question, Tyrell, in here. I can address it for you. I saw it, but I never got a chance to respond back to you. So forgive me for that. Just a lot going on, but I'm here. So if you want to ask it, you can definitely ask it here. Okay. Shalom to Rondé. Peace, God. Peace to you, King. What's going on? Apothecary Custom. What's going on, my brother? Shalom to you as well. Thank you so much. I'm trying. I'm doing my best. Right. I'm gonna speak on something about yesterday in a second, but let's keep going. Shout out to Israel, Shalom. Yehuda, Israel, Shalom. Let me see. Sister Santua, Shalom. Feed the Spirit, Shalom. Katriel Ben Israel, Shalom. Let me see. Reginald Robert, Shalom. Warfare, Rebirth from Nation, Shalom. Yes, I did look at it. I didn't get a chance to respond, but I'm glad we're going to speak on Monday because I would love to follow up with you. All right. No problem, brother. Shout out to Believer of the Report, 144 Aharon, Shalom. Nazarene Hebrew Institution of Technology, Shalom. Somebody says the sound is not working. Man, hopefully I didn't say all of that and nobody heard me. And again, I'm further up in the chat because I was talking, so I'm catching up on the chat. Let me see. So Truth Seeker said, what was the name of the room? That was a good question. Let me see if I can grab it real quick. Let me see. The name of the room was, I think it was In the Beginning, Who? That's the name of the room. In the Beginning, Who? Shout out to Yirmiyahu, Dawid Ben Yochanan, Shalom. Kevin Powell, Shalom. Yes, so Rondon, I already addressed that. Shout out to Get Wise. I see you. Shalom. Nicholas Gonzalez, Shalom. King Full Metal Bar, Shalom. Damon Williamson, Shalom. The Realness, Shalom to you as well. The Shepherd, Shalom. T Rainbow, Shalom. Shalom. Just Want the Truth, Shalom. Let's see. Oh man, I love Dr. Yosef. Yo, when I first met him on Clubhouse, we banged heads, but now there's a mutual respect. But I definitely will do that just to kind of see what his response is. Definitely. You heard them. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and share the live, family. Share the live. All right. Let's get it popping tonight. Let's see. So Sid Blawad, that's an excellent question. Man, there's tons of places that I can bring you to show that. I guess the most simplest part would be this. Let me show you. Let me break it down to its lowest common denominator. Let's do that. All right. Let me show you some scripture right here. Right. Check it out. I'm gonna show you how simple it is. Right. Watch this. Watch this. Hopefully this helps you get an idea. And I'm going to jump into Proverbs 1 in 1 second. Right? Check this out. Right? So here, Devarim chapter 6, verse 4. Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh, our Elohim, or Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. You shall love Yod Hewave, your power, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. Watch this. Verse 7. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gate. So he's referring to all the words that's encased in Torah, the statute, laws, and commandments, and all the narratives in between, right? Because you extract wisdom from this when you put it on your leb or your heart or your mind, and you meditate on it like the psalmist saying, right? So this is the part I'm honing in, is verse 7. You shall teach them diligently to your children. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 1. Proverbs chapter 1, let's jump down. Verse 8, right? Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching. Watch this. Verse 9, for they are a graceful garland on your head and pendants on your neck. Remember, it says the frontlets between your eyes. That's all figurative. Verse 10, my son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. You see that? How do you know that one is a sinner? When they break the statute, laws, and commandments. And if they entice you, don't consent. But let's go a little bit more granular into verse 8. And I've done this plenty of times in the past, but I'll go a little further, right? Shema Beni, right? Hear, my son. And that word hear there, when you look at these diacritic marks, it's in the imperative, right? Hear, my son. Musar abikha, or instruction. We don't have the definite article there. Or instruction of your father. Abika. This is in the masculine singular construct. And this right here is your father, this final kaf and your kamet, right? And then it says wa'al titos, right? Titos Torat. See that? Torat. Law of who? Imeka, of your mother. The law of your mother and the instruction of your father. That's Torah in its simplest sense. So when you hear the father talking to the son, the wisdom that he's getting from Torah, we see in Devarim chapter 6, he's teaching it to his children, his child, his son. So hopefully that gives you a minute breakdown of what I mean by that. But it can go deeper, but I'm going to try to address a lot more things that's coming up. So hopefully that was good enough. All right. So believer of the 140 of the report 144 Haran, it was with a brother named Q, brother named Point Blank, a brother named 44, a couple other brothers on there. All right. Shout out to Leslie Fields in there. Shalom. Let me see who else. Aki DB. I don't know. I'm not sure what you're saying. Shout out to my brother Seth Upright. Shalom. Daughter of the Most High. Shalom. I like that. Yeti Ibri Dre. Shalom. Thank you, Sister Lataris Harrison, for the donation. I appreciate that. Kenny Love. Shalom. This guy is wise to be so young. Listen, it's not me, man. I have no wisdom of my own, right? I was smart when I was younger, but there's a difference between smart and wisdom. A huge difference between being smart and being wise. And as you get older, right, you realize the difference. And it's a stark reality. It's a culture shock when you realize the difference between being smart and being wise. I'd rather take wisdom over smartness any day, because smartness can be deceiving. You can deceive yourself. Wisdom will not allow you to deceive yourself. We see that in Proverbs chapter 8, because it cries, it beckons. It's something that is ethereal, that works in you and through you. Being smart is of your own accord. Wisdom comes from another depth and some other well that is outside of this realm. So it's a huge difference between the two, a big disparity. And it's important to know the difference between being smart and being wise. And as I've gotten older, I realize that wisdom is the principal thing, and getting the understanding behind the wisdom is far most pursued than any kind of knowledge you can get in this realm, right? So all praise to the Most High for that. All right. Shout out to Sister Leslie Fields. I'm gonna get into that in 1 second. Thank you so much. She's shouting out the rest of our staff that's in here. Shout out to Raphael. Shalom. Let me see. NA Shalom. Let me see. Anybody else? It does AkiDB, but it's all good. You know, people do what they do, man. All right. So the shepherd divine has come to my attention that the term God equals Gudan, pagan deity, right? So let me address that, right? Let's address that, right? Let me show you. Let's do this. All right. Let me share my screen. Any opportunity I have to share with y'all what I know, all praise to the Most High. I pay it forward so he can pay it back to me. All right, check it out, right? Look at my screen. Let's go into that. Okay, here we go. All right, this is from Etymon online or Etym online, right? Let me zoom in a little bit more. All right, the word God, also God, Old English God, supreme being, deity, the Christian God, image of a God, God-like person, from Proto-Germanic Gutan, right? So that's maybe what you mean because that's the TH there, not the hard D. Gutan, whenever you hear the th sound, that's a light. When you hear the D sound, that's a hard, right? We see that also in Hebrew, right? Source also of Old Saxon, Old Frisian, Dutch God, Old High German Gott, German Gott, Old Norse Good, Gothic Goop, which is of uncertain origin, perhaps from the root gut, that which is invoked, right? Source also of the Old Church Slavonic Zovo to call Sanskrit Huta, invoked, an epithet of Indra. From root gui, to call or invoke. The notion could be divine entity summoned to a sacrifice, but some trace is to the root guto, meaning pour, the root gu, to pour libation, source of Greek kind, to pour, also in the phrase gut Gaia, poured earth. This word Gaia represents the earth, and this is the actual deity in the Greek mythology pantheon. If you don't know anything literature wise, I would say read Hesiod's Theogony if you want to get a good understanding of those Greek mythology. But if you want to get a sense of it in pop culture, just play the game God of War, or just go online, just look at all the cutscenes. It breaks everything down to you. It's profound, right? Poured earth, referring to a burial mound, see found. Given the Greek facts, the Germanic form may have referred in the first instance to the spirit imminent in a burial ground, right? Popular etymology has long derived God from good, but a comparison of the forms showed this to be an error. Moreover, the notion of goodness is not conspicuous in the heathen conception of deity, and in good itself, the ethical sense is comparatively late. That's important. Originally a neuter noun in Germanic, the gender shifted to masculine after the coming of Christianity. Old English God probably was closer in sense to Latin numen. A better word to translate deus might have been the Proto-Germanic ansus, but this was used only of the highest deities in a Germanic religion and not of foreign gods, and it was never used of the Christian God. It survives in English mainly in the personal names beginning in os, right? So now it goes a little more further and a little more granular. But when you say that this means a pagan deity, yes, in its etymon. However, in its connotation, the way it's used in English today, right, it no longer shares the same cognate of its root. It has evolved, right? So hopefully that begins to answer that question for you. Okay. Shout out to Remarkable Life Ministries in the building. Shalom. Yes, I got you, Tyrell. No problem. Shout out to Gene. I see you. Shalom. Kavan W. Smith. Shalom. Panther Denor. Shalom. Linda Rick. Shalom. 617. Let's get it. Shalom. Anytime, my brother. Anytime. That's what I'm here to do. I'm sorry, brother Lataurus. I keep messing you up. My bad, man. Listen, if I do it again, I'm gonna give you a free book. I'll ship a free book to you if I mess it up again. Hold me to that. All y'all hold me to that. All right. All right. Tony Yaya Sharala, Shalom. Let me see. Torio, I seen you in Clubhouse, my brother, in that room that I didn't even get to speak in yet because everyone was dominating the floor. You said every we see God speaking in the first, everywhere we see God speaking in the first person, is he speaking through an angel. Some Unitarians believe God only communicates through mediums and not from his own mouth. Well, my position is he does both. That's my position. So that's where I stand. All right. So can you give us a concrete definition of wisdom? Well, I don't have to give it to you. All you got to do is go to a lexicon and we can find it ourselves. The word is hokmah, right? So let's look up hokmah and let's see what wisdom is, right? Let's go to hokmah, pull it up here. Just pull wisdom. We got it in Proverbs 1. But let's go to wisdom, right? Oh, this is the wrong one. There we go. Am my screen still sharing? Nope, it's the wrong screen sharing. Let's go back to the other screen. There we go. All right, so here's your word, hokmah, right? From hakam. Let's go to the root, hakam. It means to be wise, right? It gives you the primitive root here. Verb to be wise, restrain from acting in an evil manner. You see that? To restrain from acting in an evil manner, to judge, to govern, to make firm, sound, free of defect by the exercise of skill. That is your word or your verb to be wise, hakma. So hakma becomes a verbal noun when we go to hokma, right? Hokma means wisdom, which is the abstract essence of the concrete, to restrain from acting or making an evil judgment or decision. That's what that is. Hopefully that begins to get you into a journey. And there's other lexicons you can go into that gives you more understanding of that. A good one I would recommend is the Halat, the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament. And the other one I recommend is the Dictionary of Classical Hebrew by Kleins. Okay. All right. Israel. Somebody asked me that before. It may have been you. The books of Adam, the Adam and Eve books are late books after Christianity, late. Right? Or the form, at least the form we have today, right? So that's why, because it's late, I'm very suspect of it or suspicious of it, and I don't really put a lot of weight into it. But if you want to pull out anything in there to discuss, we can definitely do that, no problem. All right. So Sister Lynette, new information coming out about the vaccinations. I'm gonna reserve that for another session, but what I'll do is I'll make a couple of posts on the community tab to give my perspective on that. So hopefully that'll help you in that regard. Okay. All right. So Stacks 2026. Why do you think Solomon fell short if he was considered the wisest? The reason why he fell short, and I'm going to show this to you, right? This is very important, right? We're going to see from the text itself. Let me pull it up. See, wisdom, just because you have wisdom does not mean you're infallible. It does not mean that you're without defect. And the reason why is because wisdom is essence. All you could do is grab onto it and possess it for a period of time. And the thing is, the more you encounter it, the more you possess it, the more it can conform your behavior. But this takes a lifetime. This is why in ancient times, the elders who held all of the knowledge and wisdom, right? In West Africa, they called it griot. The elders were responsible for knowing the entire history of successive generations, not just your generation, but generation that came after them. They see the things that happen historically. They know the good and bad. They know the ups and downs. They know all of that. So what happens is, given that they have this length and breadth of knowledge, they know the best decisions to make for overseeing the community, right? This is an ideal situation. Today, we got a lot of old fools that are not wise at all, right? But wisdom it does a transformation of your character, and it happens over time. But what it doesn't do is it does not make you perfect. Everybody who has wisdom is still flawed. Nobody is perfect. And remember, the upbringing that the king Solomon had was much different than his father David. And even David fell, and he was wise, not as wise as his son, but even he fell by looking at another man's wife and desired another man's wife. And he was considered a friend to the Most High. David was somebody whose heart was after Yah. So even he was not exempt from being fallible. Okay, that's important. So the reason why Solomon got wisdom is because that's what he asked for to run the nation of Israel. So Yah gave it to him. But wisdom will not make you perfect. It will mature you, but you will still be fallible, because in all his wisdom, he says something very profound. Watch this. Watch this. I'm going to show this to you, right? Watch this. And that's an excellent question, by the way. Right? Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 20. And then we're going to get into what happened with Solomon real quick. Hold off on your questions until I catch up in the chat, please, if y'all don't mind. So I don't want to miss anything, right? So watch this. Watch this. Watch this. Oh, this one right here. All right, let's jump down. All right, let's read this. Verse 20. All right, let's do verse 19. Wisdom gives strength to the wise man more than 10 rulers who are in the city. Surely there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. Verse 23. All this I have tested by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. You see that? The first thing is, there's not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. Always keep that in mind. From the wisest person on earth, you said, right? That fell, whatever. We don't know what happened in the final years of King Solomon. I don't know if he was redeemed or not. There's a lot of different things going on based on extra biblical texts or whatever. But all I'm saying is, it's believed that he wrote Ecclesiastes, and this is what he was saying towards the end of his life. And if this is the case, then he found redemption in the last chapter, in the last verse, right? But watch this. He says, all this I have tested by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. Remember I said that you get it in waves here and there, but it's something that you got to hold on, but eventually it may dissipate and come back, because it's not you. It's an essence that you have to latch on to, right? And you have to allow it to transform your character, your behavior, your attitude, your disposition. And this is a lifelong process, okay? When Solomon did what he did, he wasn't an old man when that happened. And sometimes having all that wisdom can make you prideful, can inflate your ego, right? So when this was written, it was a man who'd been through everything and is giving you his final words. But he says in verse 24, that which has been is far off and deep, very deep. Who can find it? I turn my heart to know and to search out and to seek wisdom in the scheme of things, and to know the wickedness of folly and the foolishness that is madness. And I find something more bitter than death. The woman whose heart is snares and nets, and whose hands are fetters. So let's slow down here. Slow down here. Let's slow down. Remember, this is him looking back on his life based on the question you asked, talking about being wise, and found that even though I said I will be wise, he realized that wisdom was even further away than he can imagine. Ain't that fascinating? Then he goes to say, I turn my heart to know and to search out and to seek wisdom and the scheme of things, and to know the wickedness of folly and the foolishness that is madness. And I find something more bitter than death, the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and whose hands are fetters. He who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. Behold, this is what I found, says the preacher, while adding one thing to another, to find the scheme of things which my soul has sought repeatedly, but I have not found. One man among 1,000 I found, but a woman among all these I have not found. See, this alone I found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. What is he saying? Even though him as a man that he was able to latch on to wisdom. Wisdom was imbued into him, right? But he says there, I found something more bitter than death, the woman whose heart is snares and nets and whose hands are fetters. He who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. So he says he who pleases God escapes her, because in that moment he uses wisdom, but the sinner is taken by her, which means it goes back to what he said earlier. There is no righteous man that does good who does not sin. So there's going to be moments as a king, as a leader, as a man, you may have wisdom. But what he found out was that there are women out there who, again, heart is snares and nets and who hands is fetters. Why? Why is he saying that even though you have wisdom, a woman can still trap you up? It's because Chokmah, remember, Chokmah is feminine, which means that because it's feminine in essence, wisdom as a feminine attribute comes through the intuition of women. Some women take that, manipulate it, and use it to trap men, use it to trap leaders. So no matter how wise you are, if you're not on your P's and Q's and things are going on, as a man, even with all that wisdom, you can get caught up. No one's exempt. I've been through that. So I know what that is. I understand what his struggle is. And this was prophesied before any of us was born. So just because you have wisdom and that wisdom is teaching you to walk uprightly as a man, there is no man who is righteous and does good who does not sin. Every man is fallible. That's important. Hopefully that begins to give you some insight. But let's go into the narrative, because again, he's reflecting on his past life. Let's go into the narrative that talks about Solomon and his wives. Here we go. Now, King Solomon loved many foreign women, along with the daughter of Pharaoh, a Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidionite, and Hittite women from the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the people of Israel, you shall not enter into marriage with them, neither shall they with you, for surely they will turn your heart away after their gods. Solomon clung to these women in love. That's what happened. This love element, right? This thing right here that has given him an infatuation with these foreign women, right? He had 700 wives who were princesses and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. That's why he said he couldn't find a woman for him, because look what happened with all these women. It's 1,000 women he had here. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. Now remember, David also was taken away by a woman that he was an illicit engagement that he was not authorized to get involved with, but David did it anyway. But yet the Most High said that David's heart was still wholly true to him, even after he committed that act of conspiracy to commit murder, standing by idly while his brother is being killed, and at the same time committed adultery. David did all three of those things. He should have died. But yet, in all of that, he repented. Psalm 51, he repented of that, and Yah forgave him. But however, Yah did not exonerate him for the consequences, and which is he lost his son. But Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. So Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Most High and did not wholly follow the Lord as David his father had done. Then Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and for Molech, the abomination of the Ammonites, on the mountain east of Jerusalem. And so he did for all his foreign wives who made offerings and sacrifice to their gods. So the first thing is he loved many foreign women, and it told you what tribes they came from. The nations which the Most High said to be Israel, you should not enter into marriage with them, neither shall they with you, for they shall surely turn away your heart after their gods. He had 1,000 women, 700 wives, 300 concubines. When he was old, they turned his heart after other gods. See, that was the issue. They turned his heart away after other gods because as he was getting older, he was more gullible because these women were much younger than him. And a great example of something similar, I'm not going to say it's the same, is looking at the situation with Herod, right? Matter of fact, let me bring it up. Let me show it to y'all real quick. Let's get into that. Okay. At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard about the fame of Yeshua and said to his servants, "This is Yochanan the Baptist. He has been raised from the dead. This is why these miraculous powers are at work in him. For Herod has seized John and bound him and put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because John had been saying to him, 'It is not lawful for you to have her.' And though he wanted to put him to death, he feared the people because they held him to be a prophet. But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced before the company and pleased Herod, so that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she might ask." This is at a more granular level, some insight into possibly what was going on with Solomon as he was older, right? So this is just giving you some insight. I'm not saying it's exactly what happened, but I'm saying this is the text actually giving you some insight on how that happens at a granular level. So again, the bottom line is that no matter how much wisdom you have, you will still make mistakes, okay? Because you are not wisdom, right? You can only possess it, and you can only allow it to transform you to hearken unto his call. But with so many distractions in this life, so many issues and things on abound, no man that is just or righteous that does good does not sin. Okay. All right. So let me see. All nations, tongues, and kindreds says, "Are you a black Hebrew Israelite?" No. Next question. Let me see. Okay, yeah. I'm a little behind. Let me catch up with everybody here. Let's see. Shout out to Mona Breakley. Hold on, Shepard. I see your question. Let me see if there's other questions in here. Shout out to Cesar Rodriguez. Let me see. The Shepherd says, "Divine, is any evidence in scripture of the use of marijuana?" No, there's not. However, Getting High with the Most High is an article that I have on a Patreon. Everybody go back and read that because they have discovered in Telluride a makeshift temple, right, that was created there. And there was some what we call marijuana that was on one of those altars. So outside the text, yes. In the text, no, it's not there. People reach and grab for straws, but it's not there. Okay. Let me see. Shout out to Rumi Dia in the building. Shalom. Let me see. I mean, rushing down. Shout out to Beauty by Geneva. Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Let me see. Can I have the link? This is Ramal Yahoo. Can I have the link for the video you did about Yeshua in heaven before flesh? I don't teach that, so there's no video of that. Okay. Let me see. I like that, Beauty by Geneva. That's dope. Okay, let me see. Yes, it is. It actually goes deeper than that. Matter of fact, I actually want to do a lecture on that subject matter. I think that is fascinating, and I think that the scriptures give a lot of insight to that, and it takes a lot of tutelage and mentorship to get through that because that's rough. That's really rough. And remember, when David got that age, he didn't have his father around anymore to tutor him, and we see that even his son, after he died, Rehoboam, was making bad decisions by listening to his peers and not to his elders. Right. Shout out to Rodney Frederick. Shalom. Anytime, Stacks. I got you, King. All right. Facts. Kafani Powell, I'm doing well tonight. Thank you for asking. Doing well. Tawame Gaddy, Shabbat Shalom. DJ, Shalom, Shalom. David Ben Yisrael, Shalom. I think I'm caught up now. Okay, cool. So JIB says, are you a henotheist? Yes, I am. I am a henotheist, and I've actually done a whole lecture on that. It's called El Shaddai. No, it's called El Elyon, El Shaddai, or El Shaddai, El Elyon, Yod Hey, Wav Hey, one of a kind, or three in the same. And that lecture, I did that back in 2019 and early 2020. That was my position on henotheism. I actually had a debate with Zion Lex on henotheism as well, and I put out other material in regards to henotheism. So yes, I subscribe to henotheism, but I subscribe to biblical henotheism. It's a difference. Not general henotheism, biblically sanctioned henotheism, which is important. What is henotheism? Henotheism is when you acknowledge that there's a pantheon of deities, but there's one supreme over all the others. Monolatry means that you single out that supreme deity for soul worship, right? And those other entities, they can be worshipped because other nations worship them, right? But biblically sanctioned henotheism showcases that the deity that we follow, Yod-Heh-Wafe, which is the avatar for El Elyon, El Shaddai, El, is the supreme deity, and him alone shall Israel worship, right? Shall Israel go, because he is the only self-professed creator. No other deities in the scriptures can profess to be involved in creation but him. And he makes this very succinct in the book of Isaiah. It's very specific about that, right? That's important, okay? All right. Thank you, Roy the chef, my brother Roy the chef in the building. Peace to the 12. Big up DP. That's my brother right there. Shabbat shalom to you, King. Thank you for the donation. I appreciate that. All right, let's jump down. Let's see what else is going on here. Shout out to Gavin Miller. I see you. Shalom. Israel Young Lion is getting taper fades going against the law in Leviticus. Now, taper fades is a term used by barbers, but sometimes, depending upon the region of the US you're in, they have different definitions of that. But nonetheless, I think you're saying is, can you get a fade? Can you get a shape up, right? Can you fade your hair? Can you shape up your beard? And I would say to you, yes, the scripture does not teach against that. I do that all the time. The scripture does not teach against that. And I've spoke on this tons of times, but I'll say it again because Israel Young Lion, you're probably new to this, to me teaching on this knowledge, but I'll make it very, very succinct for you. Let me show you this, right? Let me start off with this scripture for you real quick. I got you, King. Hold on one second. Got you right here, my brother. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 9. Deuteronomy 18 and verse 9. Okay. Let me show this to you real quick. This, and it's also in Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 23. But I want to show you something here. Let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. Okay. And it says, when you come into the land that the Most High your power is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominable practices of those nations. Right. Then he goes into detail what some of those are. If you go to Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 23, it echoes that same thought. Right. Let's jump down. And it says, you shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my rules and do them, that the land where I'm bringing you in, you to live, may not vomit you out. And you shall not walk in the customs of the nation that I am driving out before you, for they did all these things, the things that I told them not to do, and therefore I detested them. So always keep this in mind when we're looking at the statutes, the laws, and the commandments. All right. This is very, very important. All right. Now, let's show you this. Show you this. Let's get down, jump down. All right. You shall not eat any flesh with the blood in it. You shall not interpret omens or tell fortunes. You shall not round off the hair on your temples or mar the edges of your beard. Okay. Now that is important. I want to show you something real quick. I may have to go get it. I left it upstairs. Hold on 1 second. All right, I'm back. All right, so I want to show you this real quick. Okay, this is what I'm reading from. The Cultural Background Study Bible. Okay, I'd advise everybody here to buy this book. Okay, and now I'm gonna read for you. Let's see if we have it in here. Oh, they don't have it. Where's it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? No, it's not here. The note is not in this one, but in John Walton, he has it a little further. But you know what? Let me see if I can find the other reference to it. Where is it at? It's not here. Oh, this is crazy. All right. Hold on. Let me bring this up real quick. Let me show you this real quick. Let me go into, let me see if I can pull it up right here. Let me see if I could pull it up real quick. All right, let me show it to you right here. Hold on 1 second. I'm looking in the Ugaritic text right now, the Psycho of Baal, and I want to find this part right here. Let me see. Let me see if I could just do this to find it so I don't waste any time. All right, I found it. All right, cool. All right, I'm gonna read this to you, okay? Let me show it to you on the screen. Oh, that's not letting me zoom in. That's crazy. All right, I'm gonna share it anyway. Let me share it anyway. Hold on 1 second. Okay. This is from the Epic of Baal. Oh, there we go. Let me zoom in. All right. Shifted me all the way up. Hold on. Now I'm gonna have to do this find again. There we go. Okay. All right. So at this point in the myth, Baal, who is the son of El, he is killed by Mut, which is the god of death or the underworld. And El finds out about it through a messenger that he was killed. And he goes through a mourning ceremony or mourning ritual, right? Mourning, right? And this is what he does. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, and this is important, and I've showed a bunch of sources on this previously, is because the things that the Israelites are told not to imitate are the things that they were doing in the land. This was a custom done by the Canaanites that the Most High was given instructions for the Israelites not to do. And this is what they were doing here. And it goes also with verse 28. But let's read it. Thereupon, the God of mercy goes down from the throne, sits on the footstool, and from the footstool sits on the earth. He pours ashes of grief on his head, the dust of wallowing on his plate. So we know that has to do with mourning, because we see that as an Israelite custom as well. For clothing, he is covered with a double cloak. He roams the mountain in mourning, yet through the forest in grief. Watch this. He cuts cheek and chin. He lacerates his forearms. He plows his chest like a garden, like a veil. He lacerates his back. He lifts up his voice and shouts, Baal is dead. So what they would do in their morning ritual is they would take a flint knife and they would shave their beard bald. And then they would take that same flint knife, like they would take the edge of it and shave, and take the tip of it, and they would mar the sides of their face that will prevent the beard from growing. Okay? So that action done by the Canaanites, he did not want the Israelites to imitate or take on or do the customs of the people or the nations in that land. And that was one of the things they did. So when we interpret Leviticus chapter 19, verse 27, it has to do with a contradiction to what was being done in the land that they were told not to do. And that was the thing they were doing, because when you read in verse 28, it's all connected to a mourning ceremony. See that? But when you get Leviticus chapter 20, verse 5, now it gets more granular to the priest and what the priest had to do. Same thing. Priest was the chief representative of the people, right? This is important. Okay. Some people said, oh, this only speaks to the priest only. You could say that as well. But, when you look at some reliefs outside the text, you see that most of the men wore beards. That was just part of their custom, right? So nonetheless, this is what this is saying. So you can shape up your beard, right? Some people, they bring it down low. You can't shape it up, bring it down low, right? But you cannot shave it off. And you cannot mar or disfigure the sides of your face so that it does not grow back appropriately. You'll see people that have scarification marks on their face get keloids and they can never grow a beard, right? So that is what that's in reference to. So yes, if you decide that that's what you want to do, that's on you, because the proper interpretation of that text is referring to a custom or practice that was being done by the Canaanites that the Israelites were told not to do, or they will be vomited out the land. All right. So hopefully that answers your question. All right. Let me see what else is going on in this chat. So no, I didn't see that, but I'm familiar with that theory, and it's a bunch of foolery. If that's what it is, again, I didn't see it, so I can't comment. But if they're saying that the New Testament was created by the Flavian dynasty, that's a bunch of foolishness, and nobody can stand a leg on that. But if you find somebody that can and they want to have this dialogue, send them my way. I have no problem speaking with them. All right. Let's see. Shout out to Water Blue, Shalom. Let's see. So we don't have any evidence of him wearing a phylactery, because he was actually speaking. I'm not gonna say speaking against it, but he was speaking on how the Pharisees enlarged theirs. It was a custom, a Second Temple custom that was being done at that time. It wasn't done during the pre-exilic period era, but it happened during the late Second Temple Judaism and early rabbinic, and that's when we see it kind of evolve during that time period. Hold on one second, y'all. Okay, my bad. I had to take care of daddy duties. All right. So, let me see. Hey, listen, I'm waiting on that too. This fall, end of September, going forward after I come back from New York. So that would be late September, early October. Then that's what I'm gonna focus on during that time period. Okay, so I got you, my brother. I got you. All right. Kerwin Burke, do you subscribe to the New Testament? I think that's what you mean. Do I subscribe to it? Yes, I have a subscription to the New Testament. Yeah. Yep. Let me see. Israel said, what constitutes a day in scripture depends on the context. Yom is defined based on context. Its semantic value is applied based on the context. Give me a verse and then I'll answer it for you, right? Because you can't just say, give it this umbrella statement that says, oh, it only means this, but it does not. It depends on the context, right? Now, if you want to know what a work day at that time was, that from sunrise to sunset, and that's the Shabbaton period of time in which Israel rested from their labors, based on what we see in Exodus chapter 16. But when you say what constitutes a day, it depends on the context. Okay. All right. Kavan W. Smith, do you have any teachings on textual criticism of the Hebrew Bible New Testament, or do you have any lectures coming up in the future? I've done several lectures on it. Matter of fact, every time, but most of the time when I do my lives, I do some form of textual criticism. They have books on that. It's on the Patreon, the site Textual Criticism. You'll see a litany of books that come up with that. And also, if you want a great source for textual criticism, use the Net Bible. Net Bible is probably going to be your best source for that. Matter of fact, let me put that in the chat for you. Going to be a great source for textual criticism. Just look at the footnotes. All right. No doubt, my brother. We all learn something new, even me. Tyrell John, yes, I did a whole lecture on that. Matter of fact, let me share with you the link for that lecture, and you can check it out for yourself. Where is it at? Let me just do this. All right, let me share that with y'all. Here it is. This is part 1. There's 4 parts to it. Check it out. Hopefully that'll answer your question. All right. You said, I think the video was about the Son of God. I can't remember. Man, I need it though. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Ramal Yahoo. You got to give me some more feedback, man. No, so he had a theophoric name. So more than likely he was born amongst the Israelites. There were strangers that were living amongst the Israelites. So typically, if people were living amongst the Israelites, they would have adopted an Israelite name, right, to kind of fit in or kind of blend in, even though their ethnicity will still stand out. It's the same way when foreigners come into America, they start to adopt English names. Like I see people from East India and Africa come here, and even from China come here, right? I work with them all the time in IT, and you ask them what their name, and they have some English name. I'm like, what? It doesn't match their ethnicity, but it shows you the integration, or what we call the enculturation process that occur, because it may be second, third generation, whatever the case may be, right? So hopefully that answers your question, all right? In the world of music, Shabbat Shalom to you as well. Tony Yai said, yo, what's up with the app? You talking about our KHM app, the one I talked about yesterday? And let me stop here for a second. So if y'all missed yesterday's session, please go back and watch it. I give a breakdown on KHM, and those, if you're interested on being a member, what that entails, what that looks like, what that's about, a little bit of insight of what we do, what we stand for, what our mission statement is, etc. Right? It is not a congregation, okay? It is not a church, all right? It's not none of that. It is a ministry organization that's designed to serve our community, and we do it through teaching and edification, and we also do services, products, goods, and programs in the community, as well as community work. What's that community work? We go into community and do the standard things you see like churches do. However, our job is to do that to get insight into the root cause of the issue, so we can go back and evaluate it and extract a cultural paradigm from the scriptures and apply that to resolve that societal ill. Okay. And the only way that can be accomplished is collectively. So I normally get a lot of people on a Freestyle Friday, 1,000 people that watch this. Please, those of you who are watching this, please go back and check out what KHM is about. That was a live stream I did yesterday. If you missed it, please catch up on that, because that is thoroughly important for you to understand what this channel is about, what we about, and how it can benefit you, your family, and your immediate community. All right. So I just want to make sure I got that out. Shout out to ABC 1908. Cool story, bro. Shalom. Much love to you too. Is he a real one? Vada real MC. Peace, my brother. What's going on? Peace and blessings to you, my brother. What's going on? Does anyone build in them groups on the app? You mean did we design the app ourselves in-house? If that's what you're asking, no, we did not. If you're interested on how to get a custom app built or designed for yourself, email me at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. Okay. That's correct, Roe. Correct, my brother. That's correct. Shout out to Mariah. Shabbat Shalom. Yes, Ascena Phoenix, you're right. Man, I'm late. Let me jump all the way down. Daywan, Yair, Yasharal, Shalom. Is there anything in the Tanakh about the Star of David? No, it's not. Nothing in the Tanakh. Nothing. The Star of Referral, that is not the Star of David. There's no way that can be proven. We don't have any contemporary evidence outside the scriptures of that being the reference to the Star of David. So hopefully that answers your question. I know where that comes from, that symbol comes from, but you will not find that symbol from what I've examined in pre-exilic Israel. All right. All right, let me see. So Seth Upright, excellent question. I actually have a book on the Patreon about that. How do we determine the validity, the authenticity, and the accuracy, right? As far as it being coherent and consistent, books outside of what we call the canon, right? There's actually a methodology that determines that looks for several things, looks for inconsistencies. It looks for language, because if the language is late, right? For example, the book of Jasher. The book of Jasher may be founded upon some things that are orally passed down. However, the way it's styled is styled in a medieval fashion, right? A late fashion. And we have that because we have contemporary works of Jews in that region where we found the earlier source from that sound very similar to the language of the day. For example, in America today, there's a particular language that we have, that we speak, our colloquial speech, the jargon that we use, the slang that we use, the idioms that we speak, right? And all of this encapsulates this period of time in history. 2,000 years from now, the people are not going to be speaking like this. If it's English, it's going to be some weird form of English. However, because we have timestamps based on evidence left behind, we know when something was from a particular era, especially when there's dates that exist at the time period in which these things are occurring. So that was one way that we use, or method that's used to date how old certain texts are. And a book like the Book of Adam and Eve, not saying that's irrelevant, we should ignore it. I just don't put a lot of weight in it because it does not pass that methodological scrutiny. And if you want a great source on that, I do have it on the Patreon. You may have to email it and I have to get it to you. I read it some years ago, and it's a great source for testing out any. And I'm going to say this, even with that same source, there are certain books outside the canon that fit that criteria. Several books that do, right? But outside of those, most of them don't, right? So that's another great conversation. Excellent question. I do want to give you a source, so you don't take my word for it. Go read it in depth, and you can understand what that methodology is, okay? All right. Let me see. I'm trying to catch up. Let me see. All right, man, you're asking me like a million questions. Hold on, I'm trying to catch up with everything. Can you speak about Israelites getting tattoos? So I gave a reference to this in prior videos. In regards to tattoos, again, Rodney, I think you have the Cultural Background Study Bible, because it has a great little note in it that goes in depth about that. I'll read it just to give you some insight. And I would add more, but I want to address all these questions that are coming. There's tons of questions coming up, right? It says, let me jump down to the tattoo. All right. It says here, in the Akak legend, that's from Ugarit, professional mourners cut and possibly bruise their skin. An Akkadian text from Ugarit describes persons who lacerate themselves on behalf of a dying righteous person. Tattoo marks. Unlike the first part of the verse, tattoos are not associated with mourning rites. The use of tattoos is evident from early in the biblical period. Some Egyptian mummies display them. Many simply feature geometric patterns, but some have portrayals of gods or of the names of gods. They were at times used to mark someone's loyalty to a particular god. In Mesopotamia, most known tattoos are slave markings, though there were also known examples of priests receiving marks who designate the god they serve. It can be therefore concluded that tattoos are likely banned not just because of what they do to the body, but because of what they communicate about a relationship to a deity. There's actually a deity of markings in tattooing. There's a deity of that. Very fascinating when you look into that. But hopefully I gave you some brief insight in regards to that portion. I'm trying to run through everything as much as I can. All right. Let me see. So the question is, was Yahusha's mother Miriam Yehudi or Levite? She was mostly from the tribe of Yehuda, right? And that close relative, people say cousin. We don't know if it's a cousin or not. The language is not, it's not particular. Elizabeth, we don't know how close of a relative she is. She could be a third removed cousin, or second cousin, or first cousin, or a sister, half sister. We don't know. But we know that she married a Levite. And according to the Levitical law, Levites should only marry within their tribe, right? So that's important, right? But in regards to Miriam, she was Yehuda, right? That was the tribe she's from, all right? Man, holy seed of Jeshurun, salam Yasharala, shalom to you as well. Anytime, Kayvon W. Smith. Do you believe the majority of Paul's writings are unimportant or can easily be a stumbling block for many? My position about Shaul's writings is that his ministry was towards the Gentiles, and it was commissioned for John, James, and Peter to go towards the circumcised. So Paul's letters is secondary to those who were Jews or identify as a Jew, as an Israelite. However, his writings were geared to a particular audience that were foreign from the native Jews of that region, right? But because he was astute in language and well-studied, he was able to use certain elements of theology and philosophy to cater to the audience that he spoke to in the different regions outside of Jerusalem, outside of Israel, right? So yes, it could be a stumbling block, especially if you don't know the theology of Paul or Paul. He has a distinct theology. It has some similarities to other authors, yes, but there's elements of it that is very distinct, very distinct. Matter of fact, there was a book that I showed y'all here. Let me see if I can pull it out here. If I have it here, right? So here it says, from the Judaism of Jesus to the Christianity of Paul, by Igor P. Lepovsky, excuse me. And he does a great analysis doing a dichotomy of both Yeshua's teachings and Paul's teachings, shows you similarities and shows you stark differences, right? Excellent book to kind of look into the theology of Paul. Also, Gordon Fee wrote a book about the theology of Paul, and that's on the Patreon. If you're interested, I have that book on the Patreon, or you can just order it from Amazon. All right. All right, man. I'm so late, y'all. Let me go to the bottom and go all the way up. Shout out to Derek Kimball. Thank you for the donation. Shalom, Divine and family. Divine, do you subscribe to life after death? What is your position on where we go once we die? Shalom, brother. Excellent question. I can deal with that objectively or subjectively, but because you asked me for my subjective position, after we die, we are in a state where we are awaiting judgment. Okay, this is consistent with most of the ancient Near East. The dead has a degree of consciousness, but it's limited. Okay, and if you really want to see a lot of insight into that, There's several books on the Patreon. Just type in death in the Patreon or dead or afterlife. I have maybe about 8 books on there, maybe about 6 books and 2 articles on there that get more into that. But that's my position on that. All right. That's my position on that. But let me go and try to catch up. So Sharuka, Israel, Shalom, is root work considered witchcraft? It depends. What are you attempting to do or perform with the root work? And it depends on what kind of root you're talking about, right? So root work in every culture is different, right? So this can be a means of sortition, which is divination. It could be a means of healing. It could be a means of insight into a personal matter. So it depends. That's too general, and I would need some more information in regards to that. All right. Yes, Talmud Halakha, that's correct. You're right in regards to Isaiah 45. So again, if y'all have this, go check it out. Or I do have an article on Isaiah 44:5 on the Patreon. You can check out as well. That has more information on that. All right. Shout out to Hebrew Polymath. I like the membership video. Want to learn more about the scholarship program for the KHIP membership. The scholarship program is not available now. It won't be available till after our KHM virtual homeschool is established. Once that's done, which should be done before the fall semester, then the scholarship program will be available in the fall. All right. So thank you for inquiring about that and showing interest in that. And again, everybody here, I know you love the knowledge, but please invest in everything else we're doing as a community. Go back, check that video out, see what we have going on, and sign up if you are persuaded or convicted to do so. No pressure. All right. All right. Let's see. What else we got? What else we got? Thank you, Kenny Love. I appreciate the love, my brother. Thank you so much, man. So does John's gospel have a source? What do you mean by that? You mean like source M for Matthew, source L for Luke, source Q, which is a sayings gospel that Matthew and Mark borrow from in the places in which they agree. Matthew and Mark also agree with Mark. Matthew and Luke also agree with Mark in certain places. They draw from what's called the Markian priority, which means the book of Mark was the first gospel written. Matthew borrowed from it, Luke borrowed from it. And the places where you see the same narrative or saying in Mark, Matthew, Luke, it's believed that Matthew and Luke borrowed that from an earlier gospel, which was Mark. Mark was a traveling companion of Peter or Cephas, and therefore that is Peter's gospel, right? And if there's places where we only have references that are in Matthew and Luke that comes from a Q source, right, which the Gospel of Thomas is considered one Q source, and there's other Q sources as well that could be similar Q sources. And then if there's only in Matthew, it's considered the M source. If it's only in Luke, it's called the L source. But yes, there is a J source, quote unquote, that just refers to what we get in the book of John, because John only has one place where it agrees with Matthew and Luke, which is very fascinating. Everything else is pretty distinct. It was written late, and it was believed that a lot of the Johannine community were responsible for the redaction of that gospel, right? So hopefully that answers your question if that's what you're asking, all right? So let me see. Do I think Paul was pro or anti-Torah? Paul was definitely not against the Torah. From my analysis, my research, and my reading in Revelations, he was not against Torah. There's people that propose that, but he was not against Torah. If you got something a little bit more in particular, let me know. All right. Shout out to Marcus Jones. Have you broken down ego ami? Yes, I have. And I've referenced that every time Yeshua says that, it's referring to his messiahship. And I even went into the netbible.org and I showed a footnote from Christian scholars who put that translation together, who also confirms that. And this is why we talk about the law first reference. The first time we see ego ami is in John chapter 4 when he's speaking to the woman at the well, where the topic is about his messiahship. Everywhere else where he says ego ami in the Greek, he's referring to him being the Messiah. Ego ami on own would mean he said, I am that I am, which is a claim made by Yod He Wav He in Shemot chapter 3. That's not what's going on there. Context dictates the semantic value of phrases, idioms, and even single words. All right. So hopefully that answers your question. All right. Okay, let's see. What else? Shout out to Imani Yisrael. Shalom, sis. Sister Nisi's Pieces, shalom. She says, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're dropping a lot of knowledge tonight, man. A lot of knowledges, quick firing through all these questions, dropping gems in between. This is what we do here. If you're brand new, hit that subscribe button. Don't be selfish. Share this video with everybody else so they can partake in this. And if you want to support this ministry, you can do so in a way that gives back to you immediately, and that's on our Patreon. www.patreon.com/DivineProspect. I put some new articles up there. One of them is talking about Babylonian Judaism and Zoroastrianism, which is fascinating. And another one deals with Christianity in the Arabian Peninsula. Remember, I talked about that before. I don't know where that brother Malcolm in the middle is at, but Malcolm came on here, started going hard with Islam. I said, brother, do you really want to talk about Islam? Because I'm going to go the unorthodox route. And the first thing you got to understand before you even touch Islam is Christianity in the Arabian Peninsula and why Islam took hold when Christianity already had a lockdown amongst the Arabs in that region. It was because of disunity. And Islam brought unity to those Arabs by utilizing a form of Christianity that had a low Christology. But anyway, okay, let me see. A Son of Phoenix, of course. Brother Josh. Yes. I'm familiar with him and his staff. Good brothers, man. We agree on some things and we disagree on some things. So, yes, I've had a conversation with them. Shout out to Nakara in the building. Shabbat Shalom. What's going on? My brother Arataza Yasharala. Shalom. What's going on? What's going on? Sia Latanu Yisrael. Shalom. Shalom to you as well. All right. The fiery furnace refers to destruction. So when he's talking about Gehenna, which is the valley of Ben Hinnom, he is talking about a place where that represents judgment. And judgment is represented by fire consuming something. So fiery furnace is figurative and is referring to a destruction that will happen. And typically cities will be burnt down by fire. People will be burnt by fire. You see that the Israelites people will be burnt by fire. Having your body consumed was something that was taboo in the culture. So today we have crematories, right? That fully consume bodies. And those times, death by burning of the body was something that if you died that way, that was a dishonorable way to die. I actually have an article on the Patreon that goes in depth about it. That's why you should have already subscribed to the Patreon to take a look at all these sources of things that I'm telling you to go back and look. I created as a repository for Israel that if you're serious about this walk and you want to go to further study, a small investment goes a long way and it's immediate. We got tons of stuff, resources, articles, books, exclusive content by me, teachings that I don't share on here, my blogs, my articles, tons of stuff that's on here that you don't find on YouTube. I put it on Patreon so we can weed out and filter the trolls and people who really are invested in this walk and learning more about it. The Patreon is there for you. Okay. Okay. Let's see what else is going on here. Let me see. So Gina B Direct. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Yes. So you're talking about doxology, which involves worship and praises together. I do have a source on the Patreon by that. I can't recall the name. It's been some time since I read it, but it is on the Patreon. Or just email me and I can send the book to you so you can check it out. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, my brother John. I'm glad you appreciated that. All right. So Israel, Young Lion. Yes. So I've taught on the Shabbat on this channel. All you got to do is type in Kingdom Harbinger Ministries Sabbath, and you'll see all the live streams and the videos in which I discuss the Shabbat. All right. So go back and check that out. All right. Hopefully that helps you out. All right. So Yirmiyahu ben Yisrael, sources on the Apocrypha. So a good source for the Apocrypha I can't really, I'm using it to prop up my camera, but it's the New Cambridge Paragraph Bible. Get the full extent version, the New Cambridge Paragraph. Matter of fact, let me put that link in the description if you really want a great, authentic apocrypha with some great notes and some minute redactions or edits, so that way it could read the way that the translators of the 1611 King James intended it to be read, without the copyist errors, the typographic errors, etc. Right? Let me give you that source. Let me drop it in the chat. Hold on one second. If you read the King James, the only King James that I recommend you read is a New Cambridge Paragraph Bible. Okay. Now, this Bible, my brother, if you want it, is going to cost you a grip. It's $121 for the black calfskin leather version, right? This thing has, let me go back over it again, 1,616 pages, okay? It's been published by the Cambridge University Press. It's a reprint edition from the 2011 version. This is the best King James Bible that you can get today, and I will drop it in the chat for anybody who loves the King James. This is what I recommend for you to get. Hopefully don't get cut off in there. All right, somebody click that link that I put in there. Oh, man, it split it up. All right, let me do y'all solid. Let me do this. I'm going to do some extra work. That way y'all have it. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to help y'all out. I'm going to shorten that URL. Going to tinyurl.com. Shorten the URL. So it won't split it up in the chat. Here's the link right here. Boom. Click that link right there to get that book. All right, Yirmiyahu Ben Yisrael, the best King James version of the Bible you can get. All right. Anytime, my brother Obadiah Ben Yisrael, no problem, my brother. Again, anybody that's interested in my position on that, just type in Virgin Birth, type in DivineProspect and Keeping Harbinger Ministries, and you'll see the information that I've shared on that. Okay. Shout out to Sonja Wright. So Reggie Phillip, is sex before marriage prohibited? Well, I'm gonna say this: sex with a virgin without the intent to marry, that's prohibited. Women who are not virgins and men that lay with them, is that prohibited? Well, the text does not speak meticulously on that. However, the fact that if a man marries a woman, if he runs game on her, sleeps with her, now if she's a virgin, keyword is virgin. If she's a virgin, he has to keep her as his wife until he dies. The only exception is if the father intervenes and says, no, you can't have my daughter. He has to pay the bride price of the father, whether he can keep that woman as his wife or not, by the say-so of the father, the blessing of the father, right? So the key thing is, there's no punishment by death. The only time that happens is if a man rapes a virgin, then you are killed. If a woman sleeps with a man and she is betrothed and or married and she does not cry out, they're both being put to death. That's a capital offense. But when people say sex before marriage is fornication, and I talked about this in depth in a live stream, I'm saying that they're not understanding where that's coming from. That's something that came out from what we call the Catholic Church. All right. They've created that, and they were the ones that actually imbued that into the minds of the people. But what I will say is that sex with virgins, now this is important, because if this is frowned upon, the man lays with a virgin, it's frowned upon. It's not punishable by death, so it's not a capital offense. But the consequence is, if you do it, you have to pay the bride price to the father. And guess what? If you cannot afford to pay that, you have to work for that father. It's designed to discourage the men of Israel from soiling the daughters of Zion, who are virgins. Okay? But the key thing is, there are several stages to what we call a marriage. Sex is just one of many stages. Okay? There's a lot involved in that. The best case example we have is in the prophets, where they likened Yah as a husband and Israel as his wife. And he talks about the courting ceremony, the celebration ceremony, the consummation ceremony. There's various stages of that. Okay. Now, there's some brothers and sisters out there that may disagree with me on that, and that's fine. I have no problem having a conversation on that. But we can get a little bit more detailed if you want, and I can show you from the scriptures that it's a process. But premarital sex being something in scripture, right, that is punishable by death does not exist. The only time that that happens is if a woman is a virgin and she is betrothed to a man or married to a man, and another man sleeps with her and she does not cry out, meaning that she says, I've been raped, but she consents to that, then that is punishable by death. Or if a man sleeps with a woman who is a virgin, betrothed, and married to another man. And the key thing is, we have different words there, different languages there. Baal means head of household. When that phrase is used, that woman is under the head of household, meaning that she is in the domain of another man, which would signify them completing the marital process. Until that point happens, he is not the Baal of her. Therefore, he is not even the official husband yet. This is interesting. You'll see this language in Devarim when it talks about these things, and it will blow your mind when you see it. Like, oh, that's deep. So like I said, it's a process. A lot of people don't understand that. But premarital sex being fornication, fornication goes back to the word porneia, pornos. That means the selling off of purity. A transaction has to commence, and that is likened or goes back to temple prostitution. Because in Corinth, they had a temple there to Aphrodite that was a stone's throw away from the congregation or the ecclesia that would meet up in Corinth, who Paul was writing letters to. So when Paul talks about your body being a temple, he's juxtaposing that against the temple of Aphrodite and the other Grecian temples that were there, where you had people that were engaged with temple prostitution and come back and engage with the congregation. We also see that another case in the book of Corinthians, where a man took his father's wife, and Paul said, how are you allowing this to rock? Because that was something that was okay in the cultures outside of Israel. And that's why I'm saying Paul's against Torah. How can it be when he was judging this man's behavior, taking a man's wife, right, let alone his father, uncovering her nakedness as it's placed in the KJV, that was unlawful? Why would Paul say something about that if Paul was going against Torah? He would say, oh, no, y'all cool, because that was a custom that was done in that area. Prostitution. What does the Most High say about prostitution? Was prostitution in ancient Israel? Yes, it was. However, it was taboo and frowned upon, just like it is in a society. But then again, I don't know. But OnlyFans is taking that to another level, but I'm not going to comment on that. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is it's still frowned upon. Okay, it's still frowned upon. But it was something that was tolerated. However, what does the scripture say about prostitution, right? Let's take a look. Let's go to Devarim 23:17. You're going to see that Paul speaks expressly against what was going on in Corinth. So for him to be anti-Torah, he's actually judging a lot of things based on Torah. Devarim 23:17 and Vayikra chapter 19, verse 29. Let's take a look. All right. Watch this. Devarim chapter 23, verse 17. None of the daughters of Israel shall be a cult prostitute, and none of the sons of Israel shall be a cult prostitute. Did you know that men were prostitutes back then? Slept with other men? And for a fee? And women did the same thing? It was mostly women, but there was dudes doing it too. So there's nothing new under the sun, right? You shall not bring the fee of a prostitute or the wages of a dog into the house of the Most High your power in payment for any vow, for both of these are an abomination to Yod-Heh-Wav your power. So A woman or man being a cult prostitute, that's one thing. And the wages taken from that is an abomination to Yah. There's no justification for prostitution here in scripture. And if you do prostitute and you get money from it and you call yourself a believer, you got a problem here. Unless you want to say the law's done away with. That's an easy pass through anything that holds you accountable for any actions. But let's go a little further. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 29. Verse 29, do not profane your daughter. Anytime you say that word profane, let me show you something fascinating. Right? Where it says, do not profane the Sabbath. What does that mean? Do not make it common. Right? See? Do not prostitute your daughter to cause her to be a harlot. Right? The profaning of her. Right? Now watch it. I'm going to show you these two words here. Right? Watch this. This word halal, which we get profane, means to bore or to pierce, to hollow out, to damage, to perforate, to transfix, to hollow out. You remove the value of something when you hollow it out. When I take gold and I hollow it out and I give it to somebody as a form of jewelry, that hollow gold is going to have less value than gold that is all full gold in weight, right? What happens is you are hollowing out a woman when you give her to prostitution. Why? Because other men are sapping all of her value out that should be for a husband. Now, remember, prostitution means it's some kind of fee or whatever, but this here talks about the hollowing out. Now, look, let me show you this. Let's go back to Deuteronomy. Go back to Deuteronomy, right? And when you hollow something out or make it common, you're going to see that as well, right? Let me show you this real quick. Watch this word here. It's fascinating. There shall be no kedesah. Well, I know that kufresh shin is the root word for kadash or kodesh, which means something that's holy and set apart. But the kedesah of the daughters of Israel, this has to do with the temple cults of prostitution. And you go back and research this word here in other, what we call Semitic languages, and look for the cognates. Nor shall a kadesh be of the mi b'nei, from the sons of Israel. See that? Two different words used there. This word we use for harlot, kedesah, which has a cognate with kodesh, simply just means set apart. But the kedesah were the ones who were set apart for a cult, a temple cult. And typically those temple cults were prostitutes, right? Matter of fact, let me show you this. So you go back and research this. Watch this. I'm going to show you something fascinating. Watch this. In Acro-Corinth. Show you this. And share a link with y'all in here. There you go. Go back and check out this prostitutes in the cult of Aphrodite Astarte in ancient Corinth. That was still going on by the time that we get to. Hold on, here's another one. Here's another one. Another good article on that. All right, there you go. So when Paul is talking, he has as a frame of reference Torah, And he knows these scriptures that we just went over. Okay? So he is condemning acts that are occurring in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Let's bring that up real quick. You remember that Torah keeper shirt that we have on John, be like John? We could do a be like Paul one too. A Torah keeper to the end. And all we're going to reference is Acts chapter 21 to show you that Paul kept the law. Okay? And then we could do the same thing with Yeshua, same thing with other people like James or Yaakov. We can show you these things. But let me show you this, right? Let's jump into this real quick. He talks about sexually immoral, right? He talks about practicing homosexuality, right? All these acts. All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. What does he mean by that? Prostitution was lawful in Corinth. It was an actual trade, a maritime trade, that the women would meet with these sailors and they would do their thing with them and keep it pushing, right? He says, all things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by any. Food is meant for the stomach and the stomach for food, and God will destroy both one and the other. The body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. And God raised the Lord and will also raise us by his power. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christos? Shall I then take the members of Christos and make them members of a prostitute? Again, context is key. Okay, let's go into this. Okay, see this word here? Keep this word in mind. Let's go to 4204. Let me show you. Porne, a prostitute. Now let's go back to sexual immorality. Okay, let's go to verse 13. Pick it up. See this word? Porneia. Watch this. Right? Porneia, porneia. Depends on if you're using Erasmian, Greek, or whatever, but right? It means fornication, whoredom, met, idolatry. It's the same root from, which is pornos, which is 4205, that we just saw for the other word. But yet, here they translate this as fornication. But yet, when we see it conjugated, the actual noun conjugated, or what we could say inflected or conjugated, whatever, right? Or decline, we see something very fascinating, and that is they change the actual understanding of the term. Now, sometimes this can be the case with syntax, right? However, it's all going back to the same root. Let me show you what that root means. 4205. Watch this, right? Watch this. To sell off, per now, to sell off properly a male prostitute, but by extension also a female prostitute. This is what is meant by sexual immorality. Fornication is a totally different word. Matter of fact, let me show y'all something. Man, this rabbit hole gets very deep. Try to take a surface, because otherwise I'm gonna do a whole lecture on these things, right? But let me show it to you. Watch this. Let me show this to you, right? Check this out. Watch this. I want to show this to you. Fornication, circa 1300, from Old French fornication. Fornication, lewdness, prostitution, idolatry. Lewdness, fornication. You can't use fornication to define the word, but lewdness, prostitution, idolatry. See this word prostitution? From late Latin, fornicationem, nominative, which is subject, fornicatio, noun of action from past participle stem of fornicare, to fornicate. From the Latin fornix, genitive fornicis, brothel. Do you know what a brothel is? Originally an arch vaulted chamber, a vaulted opening, a covered way, probably an extension based on appearance from a source akin to fornus, a brick oven of arch or dome shaped, strictly voluntary sex between an unmarried man and an unmarried woman, right? This is going further into the extension of it, right? Extended in Bible to adultery. The sense extension in Latin is perhaps because Roman prostitutes commonly solicited from under the arches of certain buildings. What happened is Christianity has transformed the actual wording of what this means. If you go into the etymology, prostitution, idolatry, lewdness, going back to a brothel and an arch or vaulted chamber, a vaulted ovening, a covered way, a brick oven of arch or domed shape. It goes down to what? The Roman prostitutes commonly solicited from under the arches of certain buildings. And that temple at Acro Corinth of Aphrodite had arches. So the point I'm trying to make is there's a lot of Christian magic that was done. And if you study the usage of that term through the early church fathers and through various church writings, when I say church, I mean the what we call the Roman Catholic Church writings, you'll see why that was done. Because that was done to guilt people out of premarital sex and for them to pay a penance or an indulgence. It's a way that they made money off of your guilt by being the middleman between you and the creator. Okay, anyway. All right, so let me see. I don't know what y'all saying. What's going on? I don't know. Y'all talking crazy. All right, so do you believe that Peter is the author of the letters attributed to him? And can you explain why you do or don't believe? I'm trying to study the text through a historical context. Yeah, so I actually did a lecture where I talk about the spurious or doubtful text that was made by Eusebius. He actually speaks about what text he deemed to be doubtful, and 2 Peter is one of them. Later on, we see that scholars have a consensus that 2 Peter more than likely was not written by Peter himself. 1 Peter more than likely was authored by him, but its final state would have been redacted by somebody later. But 2 Peter is not believed to have been the works of Peter himself, right? But it's a pseudonym, right? You know, another author who's writing it, but using the name Peter, right? So hopefully that answers your question. But in my lecture, I actually talk about this. Let me find that lecture for you and I'll post it in there. Drop that lecture in there for you. There you go. All right, go back, check out that lecture. All right. All right, we got 3 more minutes. I'm about to wrap up. So, Levi tribe, yes, but under certain conditions. Okay. Anytime Kayvon W. Smith, raise the Matrix 7. Yes, I do. Actually, I have 7 lectures. 7, right? 7 lectures that I want to begin to work on between fall and winter and have it out for y'all before March of next year. So between the end of September to March of next year, I want to have 7 lectures done, and that's one of them. Okay. All right. So Gaal the Galilean, that's the consensus. Eusebius spotted in the 4th century, and that's the consensus among scholars today because the styles are different, right? There's ways that you can see that a lot of the stylistic writings of that, because Peter died before 70 AD, right? So you'll see that that anything that was authored by him would use language prior to the destruction of the temple. What we see in 2 Peter doesn't really align with a lot of that. The language is a little different, right? But anyway, let me see. So Tierra Lloyd, I will address that in another live stream. I'm actually going to cut this short so that people don't get intimidated by the length of the video. Excellent question on there. I actually touched on that in the past live stream. A lot of questions y'all ask me, I've addressed elsewhere, but I'm going through the process of tagging everything. So it makes it easier for you to find the videos that I do on certain subject matters. Okay. And if anybody want to help me with that tagging, shout out to my brother Seth for helping me get the chapters together. If anybody wants to help me with tagging my content or help me with chopping up some of the content or the live streams into smaller videos, that are more readily digestible, email me at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com, and I will definitely hire you to assist me with that. Anybody has time on their hands that enjoy my content, because you're going to have to watch a lot of my videos, and want to help me with tagging, labeling, and chopping up some of the things that I share, like even some of the short questions that I share on here, and somebody wants to assist me with that, I'm willing to hire you to assist me with that, because I think that would be extremely helpful for people who are interested in various subject matters that I've addressed previously. But because of these long live streams, it's difficult to shuffle through it and get right to it, right? Seth has been helping me with that in regards to the chapters, but I need help with tagging, and I need help with labeling, and help with chopping these videos up to smaller consumable parts, so that way it's easier for people to see what we share here from KHM. So if anybody's interested in that role, email me at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. It's a paid role, and I'll definitely compensate you for your time. Okay. All right. Levi tribe, yes, but you'll see that a lot of that language is one-sided, and it was one-sided because of the allowance of multiple wives and concubines during that time period, right? But that's another subject matter we can go on another time. We hit 2 hours, so I'm going to close out for now. Okay. Thank you, Seth. I appreciate that. Thank you, Seth. No problem. All right, so let me go ahead and close out. Yes, so souls of our ancestors, I spoke on Joseph, the father of Yeshua, and the various conspiracy theories and theories behind what happened to him, and conspiracies behind what happened to him, and how he was X out the picture. It was believed that he had died before Yeshua came on the scene and started teaching, and he was absent because typically the father would be around, and Yeshua could not emerge into fatherhood and claim that the Most High is his direct father without acknowledging his birth father. So Yosef died before he came into adulthood, because remember, in the book of Luke, when they go to a feast, a festival in the land, they do a Hajj, right, to a feast, and they lose Yeshua at the age of 12, going on 13, and they come back and they find him teaching and building with the elders, right? He said, "Did you not know I was about my father's business?" And he's like, "What?" Because Mary said, "Your father," right? He said, "Did you not know I was about my father's business?" He realized, whoa, I'm overstepping my boundary. So the text says, then he subjugated himself to them, so he won't break the law. So Joseph had to die early, which he did, in order for Yeshua to now's direct authority to come from the Father, without overstepping the boundaries of being subject to his elderly father by birth that would be here on the earth, right? That's some insight, one particular perspective, etc. So hopefully that helps to give you something to look into. All right. So Luke 12:51 truth. Shalom to you, my brother. I think you meant to say MSS. I think that's the designation for manuscripts. MMS has to do with text messages and stuff like that, multimedia, short messages. But anyway, I just mess with you, right? But the Shem Tov. Now, when you say earliest manuscript, remember the Shem Tov is captured in the work of another author. It's not a standalone work by itself. It comes from the work of another author that was against the high Christology of Jesus. Go back and look at the history about that. But that would be the earliest reference that we have and citation of a Hebrew form of the book of Matthew. Now, the book of Matthew that we have, that Shem Tov, was written by somebody fluent in Hebrew, somebody that was aware of some what we call archaisms of Hebrew in the 1st century CE. However, that is not consistent throughout the entire text. Parts of it is the Hebrew of the day in which we found that actual work itself. So that kind of nullifies its authenticity with the entire work going back to 1st century CE Hebrew. The earliest, if you want to ask me, that goes back to what we will call the Aramaic or Hebrew version of the book of Matthew, will come in the form of, matter of fact, let me just show you a good source for that, right? I actually did a whole lecture on that, but a good source on that would be this book right here, The Gospel According to the Hebrews and the Gospel of the Ebionites. Will show you all those quotations from the church fathers and marginal notes in manuscripts written in Jerusalem that were copied, that were books of Matthew, right, that have marginal notes about the gospel according to the Hebrews or the gospel of Matthew or the Hebrew of Matthew or whatever says this. And you'll see Jerome say the same thing. As Jerome speaks Hebrew, and when he's going through the text, he makes marginal notes saying, well, the book of according to the Hebrew says this, right? He'll make those marginal notes. So we see that's been preserved early. But something that comes out much later would be the old Sinaiticus or the old Syriac Sinaiticus Palimpsest. You hear me refer that all the time. Designation is OSS. Is an Aramaic form of the Gospels, right? More particularly the one that we hone and focus on is the book of Matthew. And we see that differs in places with textual variants and linguistic variances as well between the the Greek version of the book of Matthew, which means it's more closely related according to Arthur Vubis, and it has a lineage that goes back to the gospel according to the Hebrews, the gospel of the Ebionites, or the Hebrew gospel of Matthew. Okay. Now, also another book that talks about that or goes into that, the original gospels, it pulls from that OSS, and they actually translate it, and you'll see where those differences are and those nuances are when compared to a translation from the Greek text. All right. Also on the Patreon, I got the works of Margaret Agnes Smith. She was the first one to discover that manuscript, the OSS, and she did a translation on it. And she also notes in the footnotes the differences of the variances between that, what she's reading in Syriac, and what the Greek text says. Very fascinating stuff. But the Shem Tov, I would say, as far as its antiquity, it's not 100% authentic to call it the original Hebrew Matthew, because it's too many inconsistencies linguistically and place names and a whole bunch of other things, because remember, it was written as a polemic against Christianity to delegitimize the divinity of Yeshua, right? So hopefully I give you some insight. Go back and research the Shem Tov and where it comes from. It's extracted out the work of somebody that was writing a polemic against Christians. Fascinating. But go back and read it for yourself. All right? Okay. So with that, I'm done, family. Thank you so much. What is blasphemy according to Torah, seeing that it was a capital offense? Daniel N., this is going to be the last question, family, because I do want to go. I want to keep this short, but I'm trying to answer rapid fire as many questions as possible. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up. Share this video. If you're brand new, hit subscribe. Support us by going to the Patreon, www.patreon.com/DivineProspect. Has tons of references that you can read directly from my library, okay? If you have any questions or concerns, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. Make sure you go back and watch the KHM video that I did on the live stream on Thursday, all right? And I'm going to answer this last question. Daniel N., give me a verse in what we call the Torah, right? The Chumash, the first 5 of the 5 books of Moshe, where that word blasphemy is used. Give that to me real quick, right? Seth, yes, 40,000 and count. We about to hit 40K. When we hit 40K, the next live stream I do after 40K, I'm doing a big giveaway. The biggest giveaway I've ever done on this channel. I'm going to do once we hit 40K. And then when we hit 50K, I'm going to do an even bigger one. When we hit 100K, you're not ready for it. You're not ready for it. Shout out to my brother Kayvon W. Smith. Thanks for the help and the info tonight, big bro. Always nice to watch Freestyle Friday. Always free smoke, always free game, always free Jews, because I love the family. And if you do appreciate what I do here, if you appreciate what KHM does, sign up and join us or support us by giving donations if you want, prayers if you want, site insights, suggestions. We have a mailing address. You have books, content, whatever that you want to throw here so we can create a whole repository. You can send books, send gifts, send whatever to our P.O. box, right? It's right there in the description, right? But the best thing you can do is just hit a like and share it with everybody else. I don't know why my camera's getting out of focus. Camera focus. There we go. All right. Thank you, Luke, for the donation, King. I appreciate that. You're making the haters go wild. They're like, why are y'all donating? And this, and that. I love when the haters get mad. Then we go back and we show you what we're doing with that stuff. Are y'all mad? What if somebody just wants to give Divine a donation because they simply appreciate my time? I'm a family man. I work 2 full-time jobs. I have a whole family. I have other things outside of ministry. And then I do my ministry stuff. People says, well, you can't sell the gospel. I'm not selling the gospel. All you got to do is pick up a Bible, right? And you can read the gospel for yourself. I even recommend Bibles. So I'm not selling the gospel here. It's funny. The haters are hilarious, man. Hilarious, the haters, man. Hilarious. So I'm waiting on you to give me that word blasphemy in the Torah so I can break it down. It's there in what we call the New Testament, but show it to me in the Torah so I can address that for you, Daniel. Okay, 24 and 16, no problem. Last one, family. Last one until the next live stream. If I didn't catch your question, I apologize. I try to get as many as I can. But on the next live stream, you can ask me a million questions. You see this? This is the standard you got to hold your mores to. Don't let them keep teaching you one way. Say, yo, I got questions, man. Answer these questions, right? So Leviticus chapter 26. Thank you, Full Metal Bars. I appreciate the donation. Thank you so much. Leviticus 24 and 16. 24 and 16. Okay, let's get it. All right, 24 and 16. All right, so let's look that up. And let's see. And I'm going to show you real quick, Daniel. I'm going to hook you up, my brother. I'm going to show you the best way to do this analysis and comparing it with what we call the New Testament, right? So let's check out this here. Let's read it. All right. Whoever blasphemes the name of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh shall surely be put to death. Now remember, let's go to Exodus, right? Let me show you something in Exodus real quick. Exodus chapter 20. Verse 7. You shall not take the name of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, your power, in vain. For Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain, right? This is the play on of the same thing, but this is the language of Exodus phrasing it. And now we get the Levitical language or the priestly language in Leviticus chapter 24, right? But let me hone in 24, right? Let's jump here to the interlinear. Again, tool that I suggest all of y'all use. I'm going to do a couple of videos on the Patreon where I show you how to use all the tools that is here for free. And I'll do a couple of videos also on YouTube so you have it for free, right? Here's your word right here, way nukhed, right? So let's look up this word right here. We're going to take a look at the root. The word is nukab. It means to pierce. That's the verb, right? Piercing, boring through. Remember we saw that soul word, the word halal? Halal also means to bore or to pierce, to hollow out, to make empty, right? To perforate, pierce, scrutinize, sagacity, right? This is what we see. This word is what we call a hominin, right? No, I'm sorry, I said hominin. It's a thesaurus word. It's a word that means the same thing as another word. The halal means the boring out. This word here, nakab, also means the piercing and to hollow out. So how do you hollow out the name? I did a whole blog on the Patreon on the name. The name, when it used in these contexts of Shemot or Exodus and Leviticus, refers to the reputation of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, the character of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. If you hollow out his reputation, his character, which is what? The things that he's telling us to do, if you are ignoring it, if you are putting it aside, and you are not giving value to who he is, you are hollow out, piercing, damaging, bore out, emptying out his reputation by disgracing his character. And that is how you carry yourself as a child of Yah. And if you do something that is contrary and it becomes behavioral, not a mistake, behavioral, you are hollowing out his name. And therefore, that is worthy of death. The same thing with the Ruach HaKodesh, which is the agent that performs works on behalf of the Father. It represents him. It's his agent, his representative, his ambassador. If you speak against its works, its authority, the things that it does, even though you speak against Yeshua, because that comes directly, the Spirit comes directly from the Father, you will now have no forgiveness of sins. But let me show you something, right? Here's this word, what we have here in Leviticus chapter 24 and 16. This word is nakab, and it's your word here for blaspheme, right? To hollow out. Let's go into the Greek in the New Testament and then look up Leviticus 24 and 16 in the Septuagint to see if it's the same word. This is how we get more meticulous and granule with the studies that we're doing. Shout out to Full Metal Bars. Thank you again for another donation. I appreciate that. This is serious. This is deep game. This is how you study. This is how you research, right? And this is the depth that we got to go into with our studies. Everything I'm showing you is a template for you to extract and apply it similarly elsewhere in scripture. But let's go to the New Testament, right? Let's pull out the scripture, right? Matthew 12, 31. Let me jump down. Let's go into this word for blasphemy, into linear. Here's your word here. Blasphemia, right? Blasphemia. Here's your word here. It means what? Slander, abusive or scurrilous language, blasphemy. Blasphemia, from black, sluggish, slow, and feme, what? Reputation or fame. This is why you got to go back to my Patreon and look up the name. I did a whole post. I'm doing a whole series going into the sacred name of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. One of them is speaking about fame, reputation. When you slow down, make sluggish, switch or affect the reputation or fame of something, that is blasphemy. You see, all types of pastors put spins on this and do whatever they say. But when you get into the actual word study and look in a lexicon that does not just deal with the Koine Greek of the New Testament, but also deals with it amongst the church fathers, amongst the first century Koine Greek works, amongst classical Greek and the Greek of the Septuagint. I actually got that source on the Patreon where I give you a Septuagint lexicon. But here's the thing. This is the word we're looking at, right? Now, here's how you actually do a direct correlation as best as possible based on the translator's usage or their word that they substitute for that word we see there in the Hebrew, right? Nakab. We want to see what word did the Septuagint translators use as the most closely correlating term in the Greek for that Hebrew word. So to go there, we go to www.katabiblion.com. Okay. We go here to the center, which is the Greek Septuagint. We click over here, make it easy for y'all to make it easier to read. You click on interlinear. Okay. This is going to make it very easy. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 24. And let's jump down to verse 16. It was. Let's see. All right. And it says, anyone and he that names the name of the Lord. That's crazy. He who blasphemes the name of Yahweh. Right. So let's see if that's that same word. Right. What's that word that we saw? Y'all remember that word in the Greek? Let's go through it. And here to save y'all, this word onoma, that's the root word onoma here, which means name, literally means name. Onoma, the name word here is again kurios, right? This word here, your word for death, and let him be put to death. They're using the word onoma here. Name, naming the name right here, right? Your whole nominative here, onoma in the Greek here. Naming the names. Literally, it's naming the name, but it's translated as blasphemes. What you mean naming the name? Well, what you do here, you click on this word here, you go to lexicon, or you can look up its inflection too, which is fun, right? Here's the different places and where it's inflected, singular, first, second, third person. We're looking at the third person singular, right? Let's go back. Click on your lexicon right here. And what you want to do is jump down to the bottom to see where in the Greek, the GNT is Greek New Testament. Where in the Greek New Testament can we find that? Well, you have references here in Acts 19 and 13, Ephesians 5 and 3, 1 Corinthians 5 and 1, Ephesians 3 and 15, 1 Corinthians 5 and 11, Ephesians 1:21, 2 Timothy 2 and 19, Mark 3 and 14, Luke 6 and 13, Luke 6 and 14, and Romans 15 and 20. We do not see what we're looking for, which is Matthew chapter, Matthew chapter 12, right? We don't see any reference to Matthew chapter 12 because it's two different words. So what I will say, and this is for me, I'm just going to let you know that the translators of the Greek, whatever Hebrew text they had, manuscript, we don't have that anymore, right? This is why attempts have been made by Manuel Tove and other scholars to retranslate the Greek back into the Hebrew. Another good author that does that is T. Moroka. He also has done work on that, and I have that work on the Patreon. But what I will say is, this is just from that translation committee. Whoever these elders are, right? And we get some references to them in the letter of Aristeas, right? Whoever these elders are, we don't have that text that they have. We can reconstruct it, that original Hebrew, but we can't reconstruct it 100% and be definitive about it, right? Whatever text they had, maybe it had the Hebrew word for name there, which is shame. We don't know. And maybe that's why they translated it that way, right? Maybe that's the textual variant there that we don't see in the Masoretic text, or what we call the references we get from the Qumran caves or the Dead Sea Scrolls. I don't know. However, let's say it's the same word, right? Nakab. Let's say it's the same word. And they said, okay, name, this would be the best way for a Hellenistic audience to understand what's happening here, because that word onoma has a lot of different meanings than what we get it from in our language. It doesn't just mean name in a sense of, a title that you bestow on somebody, but actually, let's go to a verse in the scripture to look up that word. A great way to do it is Acts chapter 19, verse 13. We see it here. Let's go to Acts chapter 19, verse 13. Hopefully, it's holding the same conjugation that is being used. And the best way to tell if it's using the same inflection, right, of the verb, we look at it right here. This is its inflected form right here, right? Here's your suffix right here, right? Here's this inflected form, onuma, lun, right? Here's this inflected form. And let's see if we can find the same form in the New Testament, right? So we can get the same sense, right? Let me see if I see it here. If I see that same form here. Yes, it's right here. 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 19, right? Present, active, participle, masculine, nominative, singular. We see all that in the parsing here. And it showed you its uncontracted forms in regards to how it's pronounced, right? But this is getting granular. Let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 19, and kind of see the way that is used here in the Septuagint is used the same way it's conjugated in 2 Timothy, or inflected in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 19. Let's get into that. Let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 19. 2 Timothy chapter 2, and let's go to verse 19. It's used the exact same way there, right? So verse 19, I'm going to pull it up on the screen so y'all can see it. Hopefully y'all appreciate this. Hopefully y'all appreciate that. Try to get deep. There's a lot of depth to the stuff that we typically overlook, but hopefully this is helping out, man. Shout out to Learn Yah and Yeshua. Shalom to you. I see you, my brother. Brad Phillips. Shalom. He said he's spitting bars. Hashtag bars. Hashtag bars. Shout out to Emmanuel Curry. I see you. Shalom. All right, so let me go to 2 Timothy for y'all. Let me share my screen. See, inflected, the verb inflected the same way there. It's the best direct correlation you can make to see kind of the sense, right? So let's see what this says, right? Let's see what this says, all right? Let me go to English first, and I'm gonna go to the Greek. Let me go to the English first, chapter 2, verse 19, so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like in the English, right? Let's go to context. would be verse 14, but let's say in verse 19. But God's firm foundation stands, bearing this seal: the Lord knows who are his, and let everyone who names the name of the Lord depart from iniquity. Now, this is fascinating. Names the name. You see this? That is the same usage that we find in the Septuagint. So the homework would be, what does Paul mean here? A great way to decipher that: get an exegetical commentary on the pastoral epistle of Timothy. Let me see if there's a footnote on here. Actually, you know what? Let me do you one better. Man, see, I was trying to. Do y'all want me to keep going? Just hit one if you want me to keep going with this. Otherwise, I could just stop here. Just hit one if you want me to keep going. Thank you, my brother Scott. I appreciate that. Hit one if you want me to keep going. Hit two if you want me to close out. I want to show you something. Let me know. Just y'all let me know what y'all want me to do. All right. And if this is long, you must persuade people why they need to watch this session. You can do me that solid. Okay. And I'm going to show you this because what Paul says here is fascinating. Right? Fascinating. We're going to look at this, right? Let me know if you want me to keep going. Keep going? All right. Let me see if this has some insight. It doesn't. I'm gonna have to look at my exegetical commentary on Timothy. But nevertheless, I know it. I was just trying to give you a source outside of me. But this name the name of the Lord, depart from iniquity. Let me show you in the Net Bible. Let me show you this real quick. Let me show you this. All right, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 19. Watch this. This is how they translate it, right? Let me click here. However, God's solid foundation remains standing, bearing this seal: the Lord knows who are his. You see that? Because again, the impetus for what he's sharing with Timothy comes from the framework of Torah. When people say that Paul's anti-Torah, they're not seeing these things that we're showing you, right? This name of the name, right? How do you name the name of something, right? Has to do with reputation, fame, character, etc. When you take on that reputation, you take on that name. In order for you to be known as his, you take on a name. The same way that as my son takes on my last name, my wife takes on my last name, right? People who are followers of divine will be called divinites or something like that, right? And the people will know that they're mine because they bear my name. So therefore, if you're going to name the name, right, you must turn away from evil, because if you don't, you will hollow out, pierce, or bore out his character, his behavior, and his reputation. This is what he means when he says name the name. So that phrase is known in the Greek. The translators say, hey, this is the phrase that y'all say is similar to what we call blaspheme. So we're going to utilize this here to do a play on of what this semantic definition is. Fascinating wordplay. I love it. If you confess the name, if you name the name, meaning that you are professing that you are his, that you are walking in his light and his character and his fame and reputation, you must turn away from evil. Again, it's the same usage that we see in the Septuagint. Otherwise, you will be guilty of boring out, hollowing out, piercing, or blaspheming his character, his reputation, and his actual authority. Right? So hopefully, I said it very passionately. I know. I said it very passionately. Hopefully that helped. Yeah, so treason is if you hollow out. See, again, Daniel N., please, my brother, I don't know if you on the Patreon But let me share this with you, right? Hopefully this may encourage you to go back, subscribe to the Patreon, because I did something on the divine name where I go into depth about this term name, this word Shem, all right? Let's see if I can pull it up for you. All right. And I'm gonna give you a snippet of the Patreon, right? That typically you'd have to actually pay in order to see it, right? My blog that I created. But let me show you, I'm gonna give you some insight. Hopefully you sign up about this. Check this out, right? Let me show it to you. Let me share the link with you. And anybody that's interested, sign up for the Patreon, check it out. But here it is, because people are gonna give you some fallacious definition of the word blaspheme. They don't even, half the time, they don't even know what that means, man. It's crazy. But watch this. I gave you that link there, right? Let me share my screen. Let me let you see. I'm gonna read some of this for you, not all of it, just some of it from my blog. And it says here, this blog is called Investigating the Divine Name of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, highlights the Hebrew word Shem, give insight into the divine name of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. This is my blog, my personal blog that I wrote. I did a citation starting off, and I go from there, right? Interpreters can further, let's get tighter. Interpreters can further relate onomastic theories to the biblical text by discerning the semantic range of the word Shem. The name Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh is described as the Shem of Israel's God in many places. Exodus 15:3, Isaiah 42:8, Jeremiah 33:2, and Amos 5:8, 9 and 6. I gotta fix that. I didn't realize that didn't have a colon. The metaphorical connotative aspect of Shem warrants a variety of translations depending on context, reputation, character, status. It appears most frequently in non-narrative genres. Proverbs 18:10 states tersely, Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh's name is a strong tower. You know what else is a non-narrative genre? The book of Leviticus, right? And parts of Deuteronomy, where it's just giving you statutes and codes and laws. That's non-narrative, right? So it's mostly a non-narrative sense is where you see that. Paul's talking to Timothy, non-narrative sense, if it's referring to the name. And in the Septuagint, same thing. It's a non-narrative sense. It's giving you a command. It's an imperative. So this is how it should be translated, right? It says, Proverbs 18:10 states tersely, Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh's name is a strong tower. The righteous one runs up into it and is safe. It is absurd to think this refers to a person running up in Yahweh's name in a literal linguistic sense. Rather, it refers to a person who takes refuge in what he or she associates with the name Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. Israel's knowledge of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh was limited by the character he chose to reveal, which set the boundaries of what was and what was not true worship of him. Right? This is from Making Sense of the Divine Name in Exodus, from etymology to literary onomastics. I say the interesting point made from this reference is that the Shem of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh refers to the revelation of his reputation, character, or status. This is also confirmed in several lexicons. And I'm going to stop there. That was just a tease. Click on the link, sign up for the Patreon, go check it out, right? Because when you go into that, you'll understand when it says blaspheme the Holy Spirit, boring out, hollowing out, or slowing down or making sluggish the progress of, because that's what was happening at that time, of the reputation, the character, and the status of the Spirit of Yah that is working in the earth, that what we call Yeshua, Yahawashai, that he was utilizing to perform his works. When he was imbued with the Spirit upon baptism, that is what enabled him to do works. We don't see nothing prior to that where he's doing anything miraculous in his history prior to him coming on the scene with the Spirit after baptism and performing these works. Going to show that it's the Father in me that does the works. That's the Spirit. That's the Ruach. And when you speak against the Spirit, you're speaking against the Father directly. You're boring out, you're hollowing out, you're piercing his reputation, character, and status that he seeks to permeate throughout the earth. And when you go back and read that blog, I go in depth about that. All right. All right. Rodney Bryant, did you know that black people ruled? Okay. All right. With that being said, I'm going to stop now. right? Thank you, my brother Seth. Another best of Freestyle Friday session. All praise to the Most High. All right. Thank you. Shout out to Torah 60. Shalom. Stop it, Emmanuel. Don't make me laugh. Let me close out. All right. Yeah. So let me show you something. Rodney. Let me show you something. And see, I'm trying to stop, man. Y'all keep putting me down this rabbit hole. I might as well just bring this out. I'm gonna show it to y'all. Okay. Let me show it to y'all. I'm gonna show you two things real quick. First, I'm gonna give you this source. All right. Y'all don't want me to get no sleep, man. All right. So look, let me show you that. Let me show you this. All right. I want you to pay attention to two things. I'm gonna show you two things to that point you made, Rodney, and thank you for correcting it. I'm gonna show you two things, right? When you say rules, I don't know what time period you're talking about. I'm gonna show you what we call this genetic migration, and then I'm gonna show you the Etruscans and that civilization, which was believed to be a people of color that existed in what we call Europe before they were pushed out by haplogroup R, which I'm about to show you in 1 second. Okay. But if you talk about the Moors, yes, they ruled the Iberian Peninsula. Yeah, they did. And then they got kicked out in 1492, along with the Sephardic Jews. Shout out to my brother C Coco. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Johannesburg will probably be next year. Things are laxing more with this COVID situation, so we have that in our scope to do over the next 8 months. So we will have a Johannesburg show. We got a lot of brothers in Johannesburg, man. Seth is out there too. All right. We got like maybe 10, 12 brothers out in Johannesburg, man. All praise to the Most High. All right. Anytime, V Romo 67, you know I got you. All right. All right. So let me show you something that's scientifically proven. Right. I want to show you the Etruscans. All right. I gave you a source in the link so you can look up the Etruscans, right? Did my computer freeze again? Oh shoot. I don't know if y'all can hear me. I think my computer froze. This is not good. I will be back. Man, that Christian magic is strong. This is crazy. I'm back. Christian magic, you will not win. No Christian magic form against me shall prosper. Because I got the silver scrolls on me. Okay, so no problem. Consequence. I would love to do that. Just shoot me an email. Email me at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. with the invitation, and my executive team will take a look at it, and we'll propose a date and a time with you, and we'll get busy. I have no problem doing that. I'm honored to do that. No problem. Okay. All right. So, yeah. So let me go to, man, where was I at? Oh, so let me show you this real quick. I'm going to show you this haplogroup R migration, right? Let me share my screen. Let me hurry up before this Christian magic come back, man. All right. Let me drop the link also so you guys can go back and look this up yourself. I've shared this on the channel before, but I have no problem sharing it again. All right. This is for you, Rodney. No problem. Okay. I sent you a link for the Etruscans. I'll send you a link also for this one I'm about to read. I think it's still really small. Zoom in. All right, so R1b is the most common haplogroup in Western Europe, reaching over 80% of the population in Ireland, the Scottish Highlands, Western Wales, the Atlantic Fringe of France, the Basque Country, and Catalonia. It is also common in Anatolia and around the Caucasus, in parts of Russia, and in the Central and South Asia. Besides the Atlantic and North Sea coasts of Europe, hotspots include the Po Valley in north central Italy, Armenia, the Bashkirs of Urals region of Russia, Turkmenistan, the Hazara people of Afghanistan, the Uyghurs of northwest China, and the Nuars of Nepal. R1b V88, a subclade specific to the sub-Saharan Africa, is found in 60 to 90% of the men in northern Cameroon, which is fascinating. But I'm not going to get into that, right? But look at this distribution map of haplogroup R1b in the old world, right? You see how it ended up there. But where's the source? Where did it come from, right? The phylogeny of R1b, if you are new to genealogy, click this link. They give you, this is an excellent site, by the way, right? But it's showing you in the Paleolithic period, right, how the mutations happen due to Mesolithic, Neolithic, Chalcolithic, early Bronze Age, Middle Bronze Age, etc., right? But let's go down a little further, go down a little further. All right. I want to get down to the Levantine African branch of R1b. Let me go to the North Caucasus, right? Monolinguists have placed a Proto-Indo-European homeland in the Pontic Caspian Steppe, a distinct geographic and archaeological region extended from the Danube estuary to the Ural Mountains to the east and North Caucasus to the south. The Neolithic and early Bronze Age cultures in the Pontic Caspian Steppe has been called the Kurgan culture, right, from 4200 to 2200 BCE by Marietta GA due to the lasting practice of burying the dead under mounds or kurgan among the succession of cultures in that region. It is now known that the kurgan-type burials only date from the 4th millennium BCE and almost certainly originated south of the Caucasus. The genetic diversity of R1b being greater around eastern Anatolia, it is hard to deny that R1b evolved there before entering the steppe world. From where? Anatolia. And then if you continue to look at this migration, right, as it makes its way in Europe, it starts to push out some of those indigenous groups, with one of them being the Etruscans. Okay? So go back and study haplogroup R from the Anatolia, what we call Anatolia, and those steppes in the Caucasus region, and their migrations into Europe and settling as R1b, R1a, and R1b, pushing out those people groups, one of them being the Etruscans, which are people of color that lived in that region, right? Because we have the genes to look at pigmentation as well, right? We know those were people of color. Most of the Etruscans, they were not one monolithic group, but the majority of them were people of color, and a great representation of the people groups that was in that region before haplogroup R pushed them out, all right? So hopefully I give you enough homework to go back and research or study this. It gets deeper than that. It's very fascinating information, but hopefully that suffices. And with that, I'm going to end the session, all right? Israel, I am definitely knowledgeable about haplotypes, but I don't have the time to get into it right now, right? You asked about haplogroup L515. Go to that site I just shared, and it goes and breaks down all those haplogroups, including haplogroup L. All right? So hopefully that helps you in your journey to learning more about haplogroups. All right? So my team is telling me to chill. I'm going to exit out. Thank you guys for watching Freestyle Friday. I pray that Yah's Ruach will be with y'all as you depart this session. I pray that we continue to cover your household, give you knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and that he will also give you more revelation of him. And those of you who subscribe to the Brit Hadashah, that Yeshua's character, his reputation, and the authority he gave over the Spirit to those who subscribe to him and follow his ways, that he will continue to guide you via his Ruach, point you back to the Father, and keep you astute and standing firm on these statutes, laws, and commandments, which is our theocratic culture that was meant for us to perform today, so we can get back in close relationship to the Father. And you must be like John, a Torah keeper to the end. Be like Paul, a Torah keeper to the end. And the example of examples, Yeshua, be like Yeshua, a Torah keeper to the end. All right. Love you, family. Thank you for watching. Get some rest as I get some rest. Enjoy your Shabbat. Peace and shalom.